Do it. Did we do it? Are we live? I think we might be live. Woo-hoo-hoo. Okay, well, if we are in fact live, please let me know in chat. I hope you all are doing very, very well. And if not, I'm going to be a big silly goofball who's just talking to himself, screaming into the abyss for a little while. So I'm gonna wait to jump in until I see at least one little commentarino in the chat. And in the meantime, I guess I hope anyone who is watching is doing very, very well. Let's see. Okay, double checking all my little settings, hoping the volume is good. Oh, my mic, that would be useful. Hello. Yeah, there we go. Maybe hopefully the volume is a little bit better now. Yes, thank you, Eric. I'm so glad you can hear me. Very, very good. And okay, so partially to myself, but also to you guys and whoever might be watching later on YouTube, I'm going to be trying to put this as like an edited video out a little bit later, so hopefully people who don't prefer streams are able to catch it and see what has gone down in Recraft land. Thank you, Death in the Shape of a Lovely Italian. I really appreciate the confirmation. That's good enough for me. I can't believe it, guys. I set up the stream all by my little self. In that case, let's jump into it pretty shortly. In fact, actually, let's give it a couple more minutes to let things kind of settle. Maybe let a couple more people filter in. Okay. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Tyranitar Almaldo. That's very useful. Bar at the bottom constantly jumping. I don't know what that is. Hopefully it's nothing too bad. Yeah, while we are waiting for a couple more moments, let's say we're going to start in 3 minutes. Oh, yeah, grab a drink, Eric. While we're waiting, how are you guys doing? What are you thinking about right now? Everything going well in Age of Empires land and in your lives? I hope you enjoyed the bow and crossbow video that came out 2 days ago now. Yeah, I was kind of surprised how many people enjoyed that one, because I thought that it would be more of like a nostalgia thing, that people would be like, well, I guess it's kind of cool, but it's such an iconic part of the game, which I fully acknowledge, by the way. As with all the things I do, there are so many elements of it that are just completely impractical and are never going to happen, but doesn't stop me from dreaming, you know what I mean? And also for today, we're going to be going over a bunch of different builds. This is by far and away like 2 times larger than my last Recraft, so there are a lot of different topics to cover, and a lot of different builds we'll be tackling, including a number that have an inordinate number of changes made to them. I almost called this stream Swiss Steaks Were Made, just because of the amount of edits I have on my Swiss build alone. Like, imagine that video blew up more than any video on the channel. I think it has like almost 3K views. And it's like by far and away one of my least balanced builds that I've ever done. So hopefully it didn't turn too many people away from the channel as a whole. All right, starting in 2 minutes and see where we go. Let's see, anything else I want to set up and get beforehand? Like Eric, grab a drink if you'd like. I have my jug. Gonna take one quick look to make sure the baby's okay. I don't hear screaming, so we'll call that a win. I'm glad you thought it was interesting, Eric. Yeah, it's the bow crossbow slit. I've been thinking about that one for a while. Oh yeah, we are definitely going to be seeing changes to the Swiss. I'm going in chronological order, so the oldest builds are coming first, with the exception of some like very minor changes. So I'm going to handle all the very small stuff, and then jump into all the builds that have changed more substantially in chronological order. What do you have here, lovely Italian? Kulga. Random, but I wish Inca would get access to a unique building called a kulga, pronunciation possibly. The IRL counterpart was a depot for weapons and supplies so that soldiers could travel more lightly. That's so cool. Like, so first of all, South American civilizations, I've learned, are, way more extensive and interesting than just the Incas we are all familiar with. And not only am I very interested in tackling South American regional units, kind of like I did on the Polynesians, even though they're obviously not South American, but I gave them the long pike, which is something I'd like to give to South America more broadly. But stuff like that is another way to further distinguish South American civs, either have it be regional to them or have it be a unique just for a rebuild of the Incas. There's a lot of directions you could go. Could be like a caravanserai, but yeah, exactly. A caravanserai, but for military. I don't know if the food bonus, you could say, kind of references the same thing. I don't mind that. But to be honest, while I think the food bonus is like a damn sight better than what they had before, it's not the direction I personally would have gone with the civilization. So if I ever did do a remake of the Incas, it would probably not be included. Incas would benefit a lot from a mechanic like the AoE 4 Mongols have. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it's 12:31 p.m. my time, so I say let's jump into it. Good to see you, everyone. My name is Robbie Howell, yada, yada, yada. Let's get into my second ever TheoryRecraft 19 builds in. Can you frickin' believe it? I've done 19. Actually, 20 of these damn things, but I'm not including the crossbow in this one. I wanted to wait a little bit to let feedback come in. And also, frankly, I couldn't finish it in time. Like, it's been a pretty busy couple of days for me. Just look at all these beautiful civilization ensigns and units. It brings a tear to my eye. And we're going to be going over all 19 of these, though I'd say maybe 5 or 6 have very minor changes made to them. As always, if you'd like to see the fully updated documents to any of these things, I have a link in the description of the stream. I think that's a thing that should lead you directly to a Google folder that has every single build, including the updated, like the most recently updated iterations of each build, as well as all previous ones. So if that's not working for anyone, let me know and I'll try to fix it on the fly. But otherwise, you're welcome to follow along if you'd like. And if you want to see change logs, they're in the bottom right of each document. Let's jump in to the minor changes, starting with the Georgians. It was my first build on this channel, and it definitely showed. Like, it was kind of clunky, but I'm still quite happy with it. First thing is that we are changing their forage bonus. On my last Recraft, I gave them like a completely new bonus because they were very underpowered, which made their forage bushes last 100% longer. The great commenter, Zastor994, gave some really nice mathematical explanations that helped me kind of decide to tone this down to a 66% longer lasting forage bush bonus. Might still be too much, but civilization was a little bit weak. All right, and secondly, they have a new civilization ensign. When I first started this out, I literally was just like ripping random shields online, but now I'm a little bit better at graphic design, so I made this one, which includes this really cool like Georgian symbol. I don't really know the name of it, but I found it to be rather prominent and like feature quite a lot in their art, so I wanted to make use of it, and I think this looks a lot prettier. Hope you guys think so too. And that, I think, is the extent of all of the Georgian changes. Oh, and they get gambesons. Like, that's going to be a recurring thing, is the gambeson update came in just as I was like finalizing most of these recrafts, so I'm just going to be kind of tossing in who gets gambesons, who doesn't. Georgians do. Nextly, my Umayyads build is being renamed. Finally, officially, it's being renamed to the Syrians. I referenced this way back in my ethnic dynastic video, and now it has come to pass. The prophecy is true. The Umayyads are now Syrians, and they get gambesons. Yippee-ki-yay. Well, as they should. They are an infantry civilization. Nextly, the Arquebusier. This is a build that changed a lot after my initial build of it. First change, their attack debuff is now a percentage. So when an Arquebusier shoots a unit, it nerfs their attack by, I think, a flat 25%, might be 33. It's one of those two. But it does not stack. Previously it did. So if like 5 Arquebusiers shot a target, they'd have -5 attack flat. This just makes it such that, and the debuff lasts shorter. So this just makes it so that the Arquebusier is more consistently going to like chunk enemy attack coming at it, but it's no longer going to have as high of a ceiling or as many implications. And I updated the civilization availability for it and all the other units in this presentation to accommodate the new civilizations that I've designed since then. Jurchens, another build that I did just a ton of changes on after I initially released it. There's another one, their team bonus, which makes the, has to do with like ally stables. It now applies to civilizations that cannot get stables to allow them to build them and build Xolotl warriors. Death in the Shape of a Lovely Italian. This one was entirely you, my guy. That was a fantastic suggestion, and I gladly stole it. And additionally, I retooled the fortified house again with help from my very patient commenters. It now upgrades faster, and it garrisons, but it costs a little more stone, and it's weaker. And it also shoots in feudal age. So trying to just find a balance between it being an obnoxious cheese strategy and it being what it was supposed to be, which is like a house wall that can shoot back, or like kind of an adapted Khmer bonus, because now since it can garrison villagers, you can use it to protect them. So hopefully I got the balance right this time. It does have a minimum range, I believe. And its range is pretty crappy, so it's going to be very hard to use these for feudal age tower rushes at all. They do get gambesons. And lastly, the Dutch are having literally like 2 changes. I updated the art on their unique unit, and they don't get gambesons. Woo! I also was suggested by a commenter to update their greeting, because I think he is a Dutch fellow himself. I think his name is George Van, and he said that the greeting I had was like the noun version of the greeting, like a greeting rather than greetings to you, you know? And so he suggested gegroet. I think I got it. Gegroet. Dutch people in chat, if there are any of you, tell me if I got that one right. So yeah, hopefully that is a more accurate and reflective greeting for the Dutch. And that brings us to the end of the minor changes section. Let me check in with chat. How you guys doing? Let's catch up, see what people thinking. Got the Persian, Persian caravanserai invented by the Persians. I feel like the caravanserai should be, if not a common building, then at least a regional one. If it were common, I probably wouldn't give it the exact mechanic it has now, but I do love the building, and the fact that it only applies to the Hindustanis when many other civilizations in the region used the exact same thing, and other civilizations beyond used similar buildings is kind of silly to me. What else we got? Oh yeah, DVCos did send a rebuild of them as part of the contest. I am still sifting through entries, and your entries for this is fantastic, guys. And it's such a shame. The Persians were one of my favorite civilizations to play back when I was playing HD. And then I realized, like, as more civilizations got released into the game, they just got so boring. As much as I love booming. I'm a booming clown. Okay, let's see. Oh, Renru Plays. You can't stay up, have a good stream. Thank you so much for saying so, my friend. Hope you enjoy what you see while you're here. Oh, Eric, there will be changes to the Swedes. They are coming. I'm starting just with the minor changes and then going into the more substantial ones. All right, I think I've caught up. Let's move on to the Lombards. This was the second build I ever did. It is, I think, one of the jankiest builds that I ever did. It has this like hyper aggro infantry strategy. Like if Goths hit their power spike in feudal age and then sucked late game. And they were jank as hell. So first thing, new civilization ensign for them. The old one was just a shield I ripped. This one I think is a lot prettier, still keeps that nice blue and red with the Triskel on it. I think it looks a lot nicer while still keeping the same idea. So, but besides this civilization ensign, there's a lot of changes to this civilization. So first of all, they have one civilization bonus that made it such that once you researched a ton of technologies, you unlocked a bunch of unit upgrades. Now, I kept the idea for that because I liked the idea of it like showing them transitioning throughout the ages from like their barbarian days to their masters of Italy days. But now it is only about university technologies. So once you research a bunch of university technologies, you steadily unlock the Arbalester, the Cavalier, and the Siege Onager only. So giving them some really nice late game power to transition into. Secondly, they had a team bonus where their villagers were a lot tougher versus enemy infantry, archers, and cavalry, but not siege and buildings or other villagers. And they also had a team bonus which made their feudal age blacksmith technologies research instantly. I swapped those two and I nerfed the tougher villagers aspect. So now they and all their teammates' villagers are slightly tougher against enemy infantry, archers, and cavalry. And instead, the Lombards have the instant smith technologies as a civilization bonus. Nextly, they had a bonus where under 50 population, their military trained really fast. That was very cheese, and it's now replaced with their rams benefit 100% more from garrisoned infantry. I really like infantry garrisoning in rams as a mechanic. It felt fitting for the Lombards, seeing as how much invading and conquesting they did and just smashing their way into towns. The best way to represent that was with rams. And they did already have a very good siege tech tree, generally, not very good, but like a good siege tech tree overall. So it felt like a good way to kind of give them another identity beyond just infantry. It's now infantry and a little bit of siege. Next, their unique unit, the Arimanos. I better defined its stats. I gave it some new art, and it is now no longer being their sole unique unit. It even has another upgrade. Right now, the Arimanos, or previously the Arimanos, was available from Feudal Age. Or was it Dark Age? Can't remember. One of those. I think it was Feudal Age. But then could be promoted into an elite Arimanos in Imperial Age. It now kind of like a Camel Scout. It like gets better automatically in Castle Age, but then in Imperial Age you could choose to upgrade it to a Gasindio. And I love using specific names instead of just elite blank when I can. And gives an opportunity to have some other cool art. Now they have a new Castle Age unique unit, or a castle-only unique unit, the Gastald. This is a very heavy infantry unit that when you task it onto a building, it will try to convert that building like a monk. But you can override this. So why did I go this route? Well, the Gastald was kind of like an English reeve. It was this this authority figure whose job it was to kind of oversee a particular region. They had some judicial control, they had some executive control, and I felt it was a cool way to kind of reinforce the Lombards' colonization and invasion identity while giving them another fun unit to play with and like a very, very tanky frontliner to help them give their infantry armies a bit more staying power. And lastly, their unique technology, Gaudathinks, now can be researched any number of times. Previously, what it did is whenever you research a technology, your infantry temporarily gained an armor buff. Random, but it was pretty cool. Now it just makes it so that your infantry gain a good armor buff temporarily, but you can research this again after a cooldown elapses for a slightly increased cost. So hopefully it should allow for some really sick timings, which is a big part of this civilization. And I love playing with re-researchable technologies. Like I did it with the recent Novgorodians build. It's just a mechanic I favor. A bunch of tech tree updates. Like I completely overhauled their tech tree. Not going to get into it in too much detail. Their architecture now goes from Central European in Feudal Age to Mediterranean in Castle Age and onwards, which I think is very fitting again of their trajectory as a people. And I gave them a bunch of minor updates, sources, blah, blah, blah. You can take a look if you want. I'm not going to go into too much detail about them. And they do get gambesons. What a surprise! So that, I think, brings us to the end of this section of the video. So that's all the changes I've done to the Lombards. And unlike almost all the other changes in this video, these were entirely from me. Like me going back to my very old build and saying, this is kind of ass. Let's see how I can make it a little bit better. So no credit for this one. This was me. And as such, if it sucks, it is entirely my responsibility to bear. Before we move on to the next civilization, I'm going to catch up with chat. Hello. Fancy shield. Yeah, I hope you guys like the shield. Harder black lines around the border. Yeah, that's a good point, Tyranitar. The colors do kind of clash with each other a little bit. There's a couple other current ones that kind of do the same. The issue, though, is since I'm using PNGs, it's just hard for me to add those sort of lines in the program I use. So I might save that change till when I'm a slightly better graphic designer. Like this change in the university. Yeah, exactly, DVCoast. Like trying to make it go from just like brain dead early game infantry civilization to like infantry civilization that's great in early game and then kind of transitions to infantry siege identity later on. Civ Emblem ended up being pretty fine. Thank you, Italian. Much appreciated. Ram bonus compared to Mongol Rams. I think that I remember doing the math for this. I think they still are slower than Mongol Rams, but they do way more damage if you fully garrison them. My bad, Eric. You can make Gastalds in Imperial Age. I meant as in like a castle building unique unit. Like the unique unit you train at the castle, whereas the Arimanos is at the barracks. Yeah, I'm glad you like the architecture transition. This is something I feel like other civs could benefit from. I have a build in the works right now, hint, hint, that I've actually considered 4 different architecture styles for, and I'm really not sure which one I'm going to go with. Hey, Bjark, good to see you, man. Original Lombard. Yeah, the original Lombard build was very, very old. And if you want to take a look at how it looked on the document, in that Google folder down in the description below that has all of the civilization builds, each one of those builds on a different tab of the spreadsheet shows older drafts of those builds. Okay, caught up with chat. I'm going to take a little swig. And let's move on to the next build in this presentation. That being the Ouagadugans, another of my very, very early builds. This one was much better than the Lombards one, in my opinion. I really liked the identity, but the ensign was kind of ass, and so we're going with this beautiful gold mask. I really like masks as ensigns. I've experimented with them a lot, and I intend to keep doing so. And originally, when I was looking them up, I only found this kind of lame stone head. This one gives a lot more color and character to the civilization. So, that's the new ensign. Second of all, we have another rename on our hands. The term Ouagadougou I was fairly happy with. It is technically accurate, but the Ouagadougan Empire was a largely Soninke undertaking. The Soninke are one of the major African peoples. You could argue, I think that they're kind of an umbrella term that encapsulates a lot of other ones, whereas the Malians are Mandinka people. Soninke and Mandinka are obviously related in many ways, but also butted heads on many occasions. And overall, I think that Soninke is a much more in-theme name that allows the civilization to cover more ground than just the Ouagadougan Empire properly. Kind of getting back to my video on ethnic versus dynastic naming. Now, first change. So they previously were able to make camels in the feudal age, but then Dynasties of India came out, and Johannes Eyolfsson down in the comment section said, you might want to just give them camel scouts, Robbie. That would be a lot more elegant. So I did. And they now have a huge new bonus to compensate for that miss, which is that their gold miners remotely drop, just like Khmer farmers, just like Swiss lumberjacks. This reinforces the Soninke identity as a gold civilization. Oh, excuse me, hiccup. I literally classified them as camels and gold, and I think this really helps reiterate that identity. I don't think it will be that strong. I don't think it will be so strong I need to nerf it in any way, but I think it opens up some interesting options for them as a civilization. I also took their unique, heavy camel unit, the Kureleme, and I gave it some better definition, and a bunch of small, minor updates overall. Again, thank you so much, Johannes. It's not common I get comments on these older videos giving suggestions. If you guys have any thoughts on any of these builds, by the way, you can go leave comments on those videos. You could leave comments here. I really should have a better forum for this. Maybe that's why I should be getting a Discord server. That could be a good idea. May still well happen in the not too distant future. And with the Soninke covered, not a big set of changes, we're going to tackle another of the smaller updates I made. Oh, they don't get Gamisons, by the way. To the Mose, another of my earlier builds that came right after the Soninke. I liked the Mose build, but I got a comment recently suggesting that the way that their villager bonus works now, because what it was when an enemy villager died to a Mose soldier, the Mose's next villager was cheaper and created faster. Kind of in reference, not to them, they didn't take that many slaves actually. This is more in reference to them just really aggressively vassalizing everyone around them. But a commenter said, wow, that sounds very similar to one of the original scout cavalry mechanics proposed for Age of Empires 2, where they could capture enemy villagers. And I was like, that's not exactly what I was going for, because this is more about forced vassalization rather than slavery. And I mean, the two are somewhat comparable, but still, I think there's a distinction to be made between them. So now the bonus works that whenever you kill an enemy villager, your town center works much faster for a small period of time. It should still come to a similar end result, but it has the advantage of being usable to help you age up quicker, which is huge. The downside is that you don't get any cheaper, you don't get any discounts on the things you're working on through this iteration of the bonus. And that commenter was Phoenix Alaris, I believe, who made that one. So thank you very much, Phoenix. I may have forgotten to credit you here, but I will not forever forget you in my heart. And they also do not get Gamisons. I think that's all the changes I made to the Mose. Didn't really have room for them on that earlier page where I was doing like minor changes. So just figured I'd bundle it as well as a couple other small ones on later slides with other civilizations they came close to. Let's take another quick look at Chatteroony. Like Mass too. Yeah, Eric, I love Mass. I think they're beautiful. Thank Bjark. I also agree it looks better. Yeah, the Soso were another people of the area, more related to the Mandinka than the Soninke. The Soso, in my opinion, are another candidate for an African civilization to be added, but I think they're much further down the list than a lot of other African civilizations that you could also take a look at instead. Yeah, I'm glad you think so, Tyranitar. Soninke is a much prettier name than Ouagadougou. How it compared to the Castle Knight. Yeah, so the Kura Leme, as I have it, is a little bit more specialized against infantry. As in, like, it's not as weak against spears and stuff like that. And the downside of it compared to a normal camel is that it's slower. And so knights are going to be able to get away from it a little bit easier, and it's more expensive. So you'll still probably want to build both as the Soninke, but it is a strong option available to you. Yeah, exactly, Eric. So the original way that the Mose one worked is that like every villager gives you like a fifth of a villager for free. It might have even been a quarter now that I can't really remember off the top of my head. And I feel like this bonus is a little more unique and probably a little more fitting to the history. Why, hello there, Desert Monk. It's good to see you, my good friend. You're just in time for us to move on to the next build on the list. Another one I haven't done a ton to, the Romans. This was obviously in collaboration with the commenter, Lorenzo M. He's been a great collaborator to work with. You're going to see more of him on the channel in the not too distant future. Let's talk about what we did with the Romans here. First of all, another new civilization ensign. This one looks much sexier. No credit is mine on this one. I obviously credit all of the places that I get my ensigns from. But this one, I didn't do anything to. I just found this awesome shield and I was like, oh yeah, we need more purple, you know? Like more, there aren't enough civilization emblems that have purple in them. In fact, I don't think I can think of a single one. Prove me wrong if you can. And if anyone deserves to be purple, it's the Romans. Let's take a look at what else we have changed. Gotta have some big changes for the Romans, guys. Coming in. They don't get cannon galleon. Oh no. No more cannon galleon for you. Small changes for the Romans only, as well as a couple of other minor updates, tech timers and playstyle and blah-de-blah. Also, let's take a quick look at the footman over here. I've made two groundbreaking changes for him. One is that they benefit from gambesons, and also they now have their civilization availability grid expanded. I'm not actually sure I included that on this presentation, so let's just move on to the next slide, shall we? Oh, and the Romans get gambesons. How could I forget that, of course? Oh, yeah, Eric. So briefly checking in with chat before we move on. Yeah, I think that the Ouagadougans could represent the Soso in the current Sunjata campaign, but only insofar as we didn't have an actual Soso civilization added. Like, I think the Soninke, previously Ouagadougans, now Soninke, would be better Soso, like better representatives for the Soso than the Malians would, just for the sake of civilization diversity, rather than for the sake of actual historicity. Hi there, Crosshill. You have run into a stream. Oh, yeah, Tyranitar, you are totally right. The Persians have purple. Duh. Obvious mistake on my point. Thanks, Bjark. I like this one a lot. And I agree that, like, yeah, this is a little more bluish. Yeah, this like, deeper purple, which I think is pretty nice. And yeah, the footman's going to be even harder to kill with arrows and making gambesons more of a useful technology. Let's move on. Next one. We're getting towards some of the big ones. The Swedes. We have some decent changes to them lined up. Eric, this is your time. First of all, the civilization ensign has been tweaked. I made it a little prettier, but that's very minor. Their unique unit is now called the Varangian Guard, because it's true, Varangian was the name of the people instead of the name of like a specific unit type, even though that's how they were often shortened to. I better define the stats of the unit, and also I made two big changes to them beyond the aesthetic one of giving them a new portrait, because they looked a little bit similar to the Danish unique unit, the Long Axeman. They no longer can build the Longship, which was one of their former abilities. Instead, the Varangian Guard is available map-wide to all allies, but their price fluctuates as more exist. That means when you first, if you're playing 1v1, when you first build a castle, your first couple of Varangian Guard are going to be extremely cheap. But if you mass up 60 of them, they're going to be ridiculously expensive. Far more expensive than they're probably worth. This means that if you can keep sending out little strike teams of them, you can make use of like one of the cheapest units for its ability in the game. And map, if you're in a team game, it means that any one of your allies can be making Varangian Guards when they need them, but you'll have to coordinate to make sure they don't all jack up the price of this powerful unit. Nextly, I've updated both the Viking and the Longship to match the updates I made in the Danes build. And I also updated their likeometer and unique skins, as well as some other minor updates and things of that nature. Big thanks to Mr. Mike Oxmall, the biggest Ock in my heart. He had some fantastic input on the original Swedes build. It led to a lot of the changes I made in the Danes build, and his idea for the Varangian Guard being available to allies but having price fluctuate was one of the single best comments I ever received. Like, I absolutely, just in terms of like the raw mechanical brilliance of it. That's such a cool idea, and I wish I'd thought of it. So thank you, Mike. Your Ock will always be big to me. They don't get gambesons, by the way, the Swedes. I felt like this was a good way to make their infantry a little more interesting. But I also wanted to take the opportunity to give a huge shout out to the commenter Manu K. So he commented and said, "Hey, thanks for using my Burger Jarl art." And I was like, what the hell? That was you? Look at this dude. Look at his smug face being so glorious with all his hair blown in the wind. It's a beautiful piece of art, and I highly recommend you check out Manu K's DeviantArt. Ah, shit, I didn't post it in the description yet. Should I do that now? Well, if nothing else, it is linked on the Civilization document, I believe. And if it's not, if someone could check me on that and tell me if it's not, let me know. I will drop his DeviantArt in chat. If not, just because you guys got to see what this guy does. In fact, let me do that now. Let me put it in chat. There we go. All right, Manu. All right, Manu, you clever bugger. Go follow him. His art's really good. And yeah, huge thanks to him for being so chill about me just using art. Like, obviously for my presentations, I just kind of grab whatever I see and I try to give credit as best as I can. And the fact that he was excited about it just made my day. So, Manu K, you're the best. Let's take a quick look at chat before I move on. Did they actually use anything like gambesons? I'm guessing you're referring to the footmen. And if you are, if I'm wrong about that, Tomasz, let me know. But I believe that the footmen and later on like retainers you would see would absolutely have used gambesons, if not heavier armor. But oftentimes a gambeson could be worn under a layer of plate or more likely chainmail to give just even further protection. So I do think gambesons fit for them. If that's not what you were talking about, I apologize. Romans in AoE 2 is a strange thing. It kind of is, but so are the Huns, is the way I see it. And if we're going to have the Huns, it only makes sense. The Romans were kicking it until, like, late 400s at the very least. Yeah, there you go, Eric. Here they come. Diego, I do think that the Romans could be represented by the Papal States, if you wanted to, but I think that the two are distinct enough, I might want to make them completely discrete civilizations. Oh yeah, Romans and AoE 2 is strange. Yeah, it's true. I thought the same about the Huns myself. So for Eric, that this is actually in addition to the Swedes' existing team bonus. I like the Swedes having this very team-oriented playstyle due to all of the... They made a lot of friends and enemies and were very known for going into coalition with different peoples during their time. They obviously fought against the Danes and then fought alongside the Danes, fought against the Norwegians, fought alongside the Norwegians. But even extending down into Eastern Europe, this was also the case. So I liked them having a team-oriented playstyle to the point where even their unique unit has team mechanics. Like, if I were to do that presentation over again, I might have that sort of team identity be one of like the major takeaways from their history, just because they had incredibly interesting diplomatic relations. Let's see. Mercenary thing sounds cool. Yeah, I agree, Bjork. It's a great idea. The longships, the Wino longships, the Swedes Vikings can still build them, but for this version of the Varangian Guard, I felt like giving them the ability to build longships and then having all of your allies be able to access them might be a little bit too much sauce. Oh, pardon me, Tomasz, asking about the Romans. So, in terms of later antiquity Roman armor, I do not know. In this particular case, I went with gambesons because it seemed plausible, and also because I felt like it was necessary to kind of reinforce the Romans' identity as a civilization. I would be surprised if they didn't have armor like this, but if I'm proven wrong, I'd be happy to change it. A new additional one. It's less of a discrete additional team bonus, Eric, and more like built into the base mechanics of the Varangian Guard, kind of like how the Berber Castle Age unique technology Kasbah is not a team bonus, it's just a unique technology that happens to benefit your whole team. Transform to the Papal States as they advance through the ages. I think I can see where you're going with that, Diego. I personally disagree for the same reason that like you don't see the Huns transforming throughout the ages. I feel like I do not consider aging up to be an exact representation of where a civilization is in time. You know what I mean? Like, just because a civilization was big during the real-life feudal ages doesn't mean they should necessarily have a strong feudal age in-game, because I see those as being more representative of a civilization's trajectory throughout their golden period, rather than exactly placing them in time. If someone did that in like the civilization contest or something like that, I think it would be very respectable, though. Let's see. Mayans made 2 layers of padding with crushed up obsidian between. That's kind of sick. I had no idea about that lovely Italian. That's such a cool thing. The Mayans made use of 2 layers of padding with crushed up obsidian in between. I don't know if that would be enough for them to get gambesons. Mayans sometimes need to rely on their militia line. That's good enough for me from a historical standpoint. Here's something for a Siagrios, campaign if Romans arrive. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Diego. I hope that's illustrative. Okay, let's move on. I'm gonna take a drink before my voice cracks anymore. Hope you guys are enjoying this so far. Do you find this presentation style engaging and interesting? Like, I know it's different from the normal videos, but I'm trying to keep the pace up as per usual. Okay, let's take a look at the Swiss. It's Swiss time, guys. We're gonna see how crappy the Swiss was. I needed to make a lot of changes to this civilization. So let's begin with their civilization bonuses. So previously, their remote dropping lumberjacks had a debuff. I was actually suggested to remove this because, as a commenter said, that's going to make it much more of a penalty early game than it's going to be a bonus late game. And the Swiss are supposed to be, strong economically. So I thought it made sense. They now just have very good lumberjacks. Their crossbow bonus is now largely changed. It now gives a bonus to speed as well as an attack bonus versus archers. And it hits all units in the archery range. So what does this... Excuse me. This is obviously in reference to the fact that it wasn't just crossbows that were supporting the big pike squares the Swiss were known for. They also were supported largely by gunners, and these very kind of quick-moving, skirmishing gunners. The reason I went in this direction is because a lot of people said, wow, this civilization is really weak to archers. So by making all archery range units kind of pseudo-skirmishers and and spacing it out between the ages, like the other bonus was, I'm hoping that will kind of counter that innate downside. Next, the self-trading thing is now limited to 15 carts maximum, and I also clarified a little bit of trade cart logic, like how would they act if a town center died that they were trading with, that sort of thing. This means that if you're playing 1v1, you can just click, and queue up a full 15 stack and forget about it. And I do think a couple of people thought, oh wow, this is a team bonus that is actually only good in 1v1. I actually think this would be usable in team games as well, as kind of a stopgap between early on when you can't set up a full trade line and later on when you can. So I do think it would have some use in team games. Next, their unique unit, the Reislaufer. It now has -1 melee armor, +1 pierce armor at base, and gets a further 1/1 of both armors at elite form. It was commented that the Reislaufer is very weak to range attacks as of now, kind of intentional, but probably took it too far. And the further armor at elite represents just how good their armor got a little bit later during the Swiss Golden Age. I now have them deal bonus damage to unique units rather than levies. Now, this was specifically in reference to the fact that oftentimes the Swiss were fighting the cream of the crop in Europe, not just, stinky peasants, right? And so it doesn't really make sense that they would be good against chaff, rather good against the best of the best, in addition to cavalry and stuff. So I really like that change. I think that makes the unit a little sexier. And so we'll see how that one sticks. Nextly, the city center. It's getting a bunch of changes because in my original draft, I was way too conservative with it. It's now a lot cheaper to create, like drastically cheaper to create. It has +1 range, and it also has a little bit more armor. Overall, it will still get stomped by a castle. However, when you garrison a villager in a city center, each villager contributes 1 full additional arrow rather than just like a portion of one. This will make it so that garrisoning your city center makes them actually really, really dangerous, especially if you can get a full stack of villagers inside of them, and should give them a kind of uniquely defensive role while also exemplifying, I don't know, kind of like the Swiss city-state mentality. The city center, we're bringing our citizens here and we will fight back, So I think that this is going to be a better way of going about it. This was not my idea. Commenter had this idea. We're going to go into all the people who helped with this build a little bit later. Additionally, the city center is now impassable by enemies while still being permeable to allies in the same way that a normal town center is, but they can no longer train a unit and research a technology at the same time. Before I move on, anything else about that? I think that's self-explanatory. Swiss Guard, the Imperial Age unique technology. The cost is now retuned. However, so it's easier to get overall, I believe, but allies need to individually upgrade their Reichsläufer to elite. They do still benefit from Swiss technologies, but for the elite upgrade, they need to fund that cost themselves. And since plenty of people asked, petards can be made at the Siege Workshop, just like trebuchets with that speed penalty. Do I think it will be relevant? No, but I think it's a necessary add. And fine, I'll give them plate mail armor, you poo heads. You know how much I like removing blacksmith technologies. A lot of people said that was just too harsh, and I agree with you. Okay, we're giving them plate mail armor, but no bracer. They don't get that damn bracer technology. I think overall, you can see that this is mostly buffs with a couple of minor nerfs. And I think it should make this Swiss civilization an awful lot stronger and an awful lot more playable. Before we sign off on this one, a couple clarifications on history. I got some really good feedback, specifically from commenters Divigos Power and Edelweiss, just wanting me to clarify that I do simplify a lot of things in my history sections out of necessity and also just because I'm a doo-doo brain who can't research properly. And to clarify, the Swiss were not really ever a truly unified power. Like, even after the Confederacy, they were still infighting. There were still all sorts of times that they were at each other's throats. And I do also oversimplify how neutrality kicked in towards the end of their kind of imperial arc. It really didn't. It took a lot longer to. The Battle of Marignano was more just what slowed down their expansion efforts. And so in summary, Swiss history, if you will, is an awful lot more complicated than I was forced to summarize it in my history section. Also, of course, it's not just because I was summarizing it. It's because I also just didn't communicate it effectively enough. So take that with a massive pinch of salt, and I appreciate being taught a lot in the comments section by people who know an awful lot more about it than me. For Ensign, I was also suggested this by commenter Divicos Power. The good old plus is obviously very iconic, but he suggested that we could also possibly look at the canton flags of Uri, which is this bull one, and then I believe Unterwalden is the one with the keys, if we wanted to do something a little more unique for their civilization ensign. The bull is certainly cool. I think it might be a little glaring with that bright yellow, though I do really like it, and it would certainly stand out from others. I think the key is really beautiful and intricate, so I'd kind of be more inclined to go with that one if I was forced to pick between. But I'll leave this as an open question. Which ensign do you guys prefer? Do you prefer the bull of Uri? Do you prefer the key of Unterwalden? Or do you prefer the good old cross, as we all know it? Before we sign off on the Swiss, I have some thanks to give. Major thanks to commenters David GG, Simbil Mina, Divigos Power, Instant Kevlar, Lorenzo M, Fergus Shan, Edelweiss, Zaster994, CG, 222120222120, and many, many others for all of the fantastic input on this build. It needed the love, it needed the help, and it delivered in spades. I think this might still have more comments than any other video on my channel, and I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot. Whew. Okay, Swiss build done. Before we move on, let's take a quick look at the old chat. Aztecs do get gambesons. Yeah, the Aztecs did use cloth armor quite extensively, like, you know, padded reinforced cloth armor. Papal states would be PayPal states. I'm sure that's an autocorrect, but it's still quite funny. Man, tributing gold to your allies is free as their team bonus, except they're actually harvesting your data. Okay, pardon me. Papacy would use Italians and the Swiss, probably true. 8 days too late to suggest a Swiss Army knife tech. Never say die, Bjark. I've do multiple recrafts on all sorts of things. Will you be making some Central Asian theory crafts? Yes, absolutely. I have one coming up that references Central Asia, though not focused there. I certainly have a bunch on my list. And if there are any, I think at the end I might take some requests and see what people, like take the temperature of what people want. So mostly, I'll get into that later. But in the meantime, yes, I am interested. Good. Kazakhs are a good shout. Absolutely. Don't doubt that at all. Did find this self-trading a bit confusing? Can't you always trade with the markets too? Yes, you can. The idea is that the markets you can still only trade with allies, but for a town center you can trade with yourself, and all of your allies can trade with themselves as well. Mini samurai. Yeah, you could see it kind of like that. So the Reislaufer is like kind of like a samurai, but also has specialty against cavalry. Is also a good deal more expensive on the gold side, and is has a couple of other very funky, unique effects. It's not nearly as good against unique units as samurais are, though. Swiss douche. Yeah, if you can get a town center built and then upgrade it to a city center, if your enemy is still screwing around, yeah, you've douched them good right there. Okay, side note for the Roman gambesons, Greeks absolutely did use cloth armor. It seems like the Romans were aware of it, so it seems fair. Yeah, I would largely agree with that. Impassable by enemies, so can't go past it unless destroyed. Exactly. So you know how with a town center it's made of like 4 blocks, and 3 of those any unit can pass through? For the Swiss, only allies can pass through those 3 permeable sections. Enemies cannot. It's treated as a solid foundation to them. Like when they broke Burgundy, fought over the spoils despite beating a preeminent military power in center of year. Exactly, Krosil. They were not truly unified. Couldn't do that with city centers. Anyways, Kingdom Hearts reference, yeah. Kind of neutral to them. Mostly prefer the cross, but can live with the others. They seem pretty unique. Yeah, I feel like if people are generally tepid towards the Civ Ensign change, I'm going to just keep it as the cross. People tend to overrate medieval European unit anyways, be it political or cultural. AoE2 itself does a lot. Absolutely. That's definitely one of the downsides of having to keep a civilization coherent like this. We might talk a little bit more about other games later on, but one of my favorite games growing up had an entire system where it was a fantasy game where you would be developing different relations with other like races individually, and you could build a combined arms force and even take over cities of that other people, and then just kind of mix and mingle, and even have 2 factions wielding people of the same of the same species just bashing at each other. And so obviously Age of Empires doesn't really have the material to do something that sophisticated. It'd be cool if it could, but we make do with what we can in the meantime. Thank you, Tomasz. Yeah, I agree. Definitely prefer the key. A lot of European emblems are very simplistic in the game. I like the key a lot too. I'm definitely kind of tending towards it. You know, It did seem a bit overpowered to me with no limits to trade cards. With no limits, yeah, I agree, Eric. Like, I think it would have been too much 1v1. What would happen if you enemy an ally while the units are under a TC? You know, Bjork, these are questions I can't answer for you, unfortunately. My guess is they would be stuck, which is kind of hilarious. That sounds like something fun for the Diplo players. They can do something fun. Hey, Carlos, good to see you, man. What was this fantasy? Age of Wonders. Yeah, Bjark, he knows where it's at. Age of Wonders 1, probably the game, one of the only games I ever played more than Age of Empires 2 growing up was Age of Wonders 1. Funnily enough, okay, we'll talk about it more later, but I actually wrote probably twice the amount of theory crafting content for Age of Wonders 1 that I did for Age of Empires 2. And the reason I did the Age of Empires stuff first is I felt like no one played Age of Wonders anymore, and so it wouldn't get nearly as much traction. But I adore the game. It's a trap! All right. Thank you guys very much. Let's move on to the next major build. I'm going to have a little drinky. Moving on to the Zapotecs. Obviously, this was another build that did really, really well after the Swiss. I was quite happy with it, but it had some problems, not as many as the Swiss, the first of which being the mask ensign. I think it's a beautiful mask. I really quite like it, but with the help of a commenter who gave me a ton of details on the region and his thoughts on it, I think that this new Civ ensign is much better. I did a poll on it a little while back. People seem to really like it. I think it was like 80 to 20 or something. We're going with it. It's very, very thematic. And I did all the graphic design myself, rather than just ripping a random image. I ripped several random images instead and remixed them. Now, first change. You know how some of their university and some techs are available an age early? Well, now any university tech that's available early, you get half off. That should make it such that, like, feudal age fortified walls, actually viable. Next of all, the university boosting work rate bonus, that has been toned down by, like, between 2.5 and 5%, I think, something like that. Nextly, the auto conversion mechanic. I thought it wouldn't be too broken, but it turns out that it's just because I suck at the game. And so, yeah, it was probably broken. And so that effect has now been shifted onto the Danzantes technology. And the previous Danzantes effect, where you refund cost of dead units, is now a team bonus, benefiting all of your allies and you, but it's dramatically toned down. Now, why did I go this route? Well, remember, the Zapotec religion is quite possibly one of the foremost influences on all other Mesoamerican religions. Because you look at pretty much all Mesoamerican religions, and they had very similar themes. Obviously, they had different preeminent gods, they had different names for the gods, different exact creation myths, but there were major through lines running through them, like with any cluster of peoples living together. And the Zapotecs were one of the biggest reasons that this overarching Mesoamerican religion was so cohesive. They were one of the oldest civilizations in the region and had enormous religious control. But I talked about all of that in my build for them. So now that kind of refund effect is now a team bonus. And the old team bonus of garrisoning monasteries, that has been removed outright. A lot of people said it was very cheesy, very annoying, very douchey, and I kind of agree. Like, I couldn't really find any way to make that more fair. Though, in one of the design contest builds I received, someone did send something that's similar to this mechanic and actually found a way to make it work quite well. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. Next, the Makar Guardian unique unit. Its taunt effect no longer affects siege. So if they get tagged by an enemy siege onager, the siege onager won't be forced to keep shooting at them. Very nasty exploit. Thanks for catching that, whoever caught it. I wouldn't want to keep that in the game. The Jaguar Warrior regional unit now has an attack weakness against heavy cavalry. Pardon, not attack weakness. Heavy cavalry do bonus damage to them. Not a ton, but enough that they'll pretty much always win fights. And their speed is retuned. They now have higher speed before elite upgrade, less speed after. They also benefit from gambesons. So overall, side grade for the Jaguar Warrior. The Slinger regional unit costs plus 20 food. A commenter pointed out, what the heck? This is like 2/3 the price of both other trash units that they get access to. you got to make it equivalent resources. And so I did. So there's still food only, but it's the same total amount of resources as a skirmisher or a halberdier. And lastly, the Atlatl regional unit now has more speed, both base and elite. I didn't want to make them, obviously, an exact match to the cavalry archer, but I did want them to kind of fill a similar niche, and giving them more speed should help them do so. A bunch of minor updates besides, like Leometer, playstyle, blah-de-blah-de-blah, and they do get gambesons. For this build, major thanks to Jason Smith, Fergus Shan, Divicos Powers, Sin Belmina, Steve Strangelev, Zaster994, Paolo Apaez, Jorge Emilio, and Juan M. for all of the help with this build, as well as many, many others. You guys were fantastic. And even though the Zapotecs didn't have nearly as many problems as the Swiss build did, I think it's benefited a lot from your feedback. Nice! Let's look at the old Chatteroony. What was it? Okay, Age of Bias. Eric, Age of Bias should be like the tagline for my channel or something. Björk, you know Age of Wonders? Yes, it's such a good game. I absolutely adore it. Carlos, I have a question. Do you feel afraid that at some point you have to push new civs further and further and start making civs with more than an AoE 3 flavor? I'm assuming you mean AoE 2 there. Kinda. It's a good question. There is finite design space to work with. Excuse me. I don't personally see any major cutoff point currently in sight, but I have no doubt that eventually I will have to start to blaze new trails and broach new ground. One of the things that I've been playing with a lot has been regional units, because I find that regionals are a really good way to add more flavor to existing civilizations without chopping design space, if that makes sense. So I think that there is still territory that we can cover within the base game before I have to start doing especially crazy things. But one of the routes I wanted to take at some point, especially once I had more of my own unit theory crafts, potential building theory crafts, and similar, is have my civilization designs have kind of parallel forms. One, how would it appear in the game as of now? One, how would it appear in the Robbie edition of the game? Because the Robbie edition would allow me to expand on some of the new ground that I blaze with my unit and building theory crafts, and thereby give myself more design space to play with overall, rather than just limiting myself to what the game currently has to offer. But we'll see. I'm not sure I will get to that for a little while. And no matter what happens, I think that I will always make sure that my builds do have a vanilla mode available, you know, just because I don't think it would be fair to have people know a ton of random stuff about Robbie's extended universe before they can actually enjoy one of these videos. Okay. New Zapotec flag is good. Old one was so cool. I agree, Divicos. It was a really beautiful piece. The commenter who suggested I change it said that the main problem with it is that sort of bat god mask wasn't just a Zapotec thing. It was like everywhere in the region. And so it would kind of be like just sticking a cross, like a red cross on a white background, and then calling that a flag. You know, just that's obviously stupid. Why would anyone ever do something like that? Italians. I hate the Italian civilization emblem. What are those early texts anyway? Oh, let's see if I can remember them off the top of my head. So in Feudal Age, you gain access to fortified wall, masonry, treadmill crane, I think, and one more. There was one more. I can't remember. But then in Imperial Age, maybe guard tower. Don't quote me on that, though. And then in Castle Age, you get access to architecture early, and maybe one more. Oops. Put me on the spot, Eric. The old Danzantes effect that was previously on the technology was like 20 or 25%, if I recall correctly. I've toned it way down to like 10% refund. Check the sheet, though. I could be wrong about those. And siege engineers, not macaw triggered. Yeah, yeah. If you're just launching rocks at someone, then them going isn't gonna bother you. Don't worry, Eric. We still have something special. It's just that mask. It was too broad of a mask. I promise. I'm not a mask trader. I think the devs realized the value of regional units as well. I agree with you, Tomash. I think that without major common tech tree overhauls, regional units are the way forward. You should make a new Age of Wonders faction at some point. Okay, Bjark, maybe. I gotta... If I find myself in like a comfortable place with Age of Empires stuff, then I'll open the table to Age of Wonders, because that was where I started. I have a document that has well over 100 pages of notes in like 10-point font of just Age of Wonders ideas, because okay, remind me after we're done to talk about like how I started doing theory crafting stuff, because it's kind of a funny story. Regional units are far better. Champions are like Zweihander, Espadon, Montante units of Europe. I don't think that Burmese heavy infantry looked like that, for example. Oh yeah, I agree with you. Although, actually, I think in Southeast Asia they did have two-handed swords in certain places. But I get your point. No doubt about that. Random thought, Nepalese would make for a good civ, probably the most major part of South Asia which hasn't been touched. Nepalese are absolutely on the list, Tyranitar. After I finish the builds, if you could remind me of that so I could put it on my Listaruni, or like check where it is on my Listaruni, that would be very helpful. You're going to make a mod with the civs at some points, that would be great. Kinda. Carlos, do you mind reminding me of that after you finish the civilizations? I don't want to go on too big of a tangent. Can't remember your own civ design? Yes, Eric. Unfortunately, I cannot. I am a colander brain who can barely remember anything. I think it's part of fatherhood. Like, I'll blame it on that. I know you meant it as a joke, bud. I liked the Italian emblem until the Sicilians existed. Well, listen, lovely Italian. I think that the Italian ensign can be so much lovelier than it is. It's a lot of it. It certainly is. I thought Tibetans rather than Nepalese in South Asia, or maybe making non-Muslim North Indian faction because having them mixed feels weird. I think all of the above fit Crossil. And I think both Tibetan and Nepalese fit equally well, though I would agree that I would have gone to Tibetans as being the most important, though they aren't really South Asia. I'm going to say that they are in a different region overall. Okay. Zapotec's done. Hope you guys are enjoying. Let's move on to the Danes. The Danes. This was a collab with Johannes Eilson. It was a very fun time. Honestly, it was after like a progression of very weird builds that had a lot of edits needed. The Danes were like pretty easy. First of all, their ship repair bonus is now staggered by age. So you won't just blitz out massive repairs from Dark Age onward. The speed is only going to hit maximum in Imperial. Secondly, their team bonus that is like an anti-Saracen market bonus and makes enemy commodity fees worse is less strong. It was commented that having it just be directly proportionate to the Saracens one isn't right, because a penalty tends to be harder to play around than a bonus is beneficial, and also it affects all enemy teammates, which is a big deal. Excuse me. Okay. Next, major change to the longship. This also applies to the Swedes. It now only shoots in feudal age if you have units on it. Thank God. That should make it so much fairer for longships to be on water maps, because the issue was before, if you made some in Dark Age, run them into the enemy fishing fleet, on feudal they just start shooting everything. This should make them a lot better. They gain up to +2 shots based on their crew, and when you upgrade them to the Drakkar, they can now shoot 1 shot when completely uncrewed. I think this is a much better change overall, and should still keep their flavor intact. Nextly, their unique technology, Danegeld. A clarification, it does not steal resources from your opponent. Instead, you just get a percentage of whatever they get as like an additional dividend all to yourself. So they won't get less resources from it. Also, the commenter Eric DW, is you, recommended this excellent little text blurb come on screen when you research Danegeld, because it does make sense that all players would be notified, which is, the Dane player has imposed a merciless Danegeld on you, extorting the location of all your town centers, markets, and monasteries, and minorly profiting off of your gold income. Dun dun dun! Excellent. This is all on Eric. Thank you so much for this advice, man. I love this edition. And I have another one similar to it a little later on. Next, with their ship repair bonus, especially now that it is most impactful in Imperial Age, something came to my mind, and this is on the sheet as well. Having repair be manual only in-game is, in my mind, very difficult. Obviously, pros will rarely feel it, but especially for players of lower experience, it feels like we need to have a way to make repairers have an aggressive mode. And here's my proposal for it. Ever played Warcraft 3? Well, if you have, you'll know that there are some abilities where if you right-clicked the icon on your screen, it would make it do this and have like a little go around the edges. My proposal is that the repair button on Villager's command card be able to be right-clicked to task them to auto-repair. Just anything in their line of sight, they go over, and if it's a ship, they'll beckon the ship over, right? And I think this is especially important for the Danes because since now they have such a major focus on repairing ships late game, it just doesn't seem reasonable that you would have to just manually click on your massive fuck-off fleet and have them all come over one by one. Just sounds awful. So I think auto-repair would be a very good inclusion to add to the game. I could see me toying around with other mechanics like this later on. They don't get gambesons. Kind of like the Swedes, I didn't want them to have as heavy of an infantry focus in the same way as the Norwegians, the third of the Scandinavian sister trio. But like the Swedes, they will still have quite strong infantry. And a history clarification that I wanted to throw in on the front of the Danes. Kind of like with the Swiss. This is from commenter Bjark Kjær. I think I'm getting your name right. Tell me if I'm screwing it up, bud. Down over in the chat, hey Bjark, thanks again, man. And he wanted to clarify that the unrest periods I talked about in Denmark are overstated. They were definitely like a bunch of major civil wars and was more tumultuous than average. And so it's still a valid identity for the Civ, but I definitely overstated it, even if it's like a little bit up to interpretation. Like in summary, Denmark was not this like a rugged anarchy. Like it wasn't a hellhole in the Middle Ages. It was doing all right. But it was not nearly to the degree that I kind of related it in my history section. So please don't let me lead you astray. He also suggested that maybe the Harald Bluetooth campaign could switch to Svein Forkbeard as like the last two scenarios, which I thought was very cool. So thank you, Bjark. I really appreciate you contributing to the history section of this. You know a whole lot more about it than I do. And hopefully you still feel like I did the history justice in the build. And thanks to Bjark, of course, as well as Fergus Shan, Guru Gru, Simbelmina, Byzantine Historian, and many, many others for contributions to this particular Danes build. I was really happy with how this came out. Johannes did a great job toning down my many eccentric tendencies when designing civilizations. And I would say that this was my 14th build. I would say that as of the time this was released, this was the best build on the channel. But since then, I think it has been supplanted. Quick check-in with Chatteroony. Are you going to comment every civilization? If that's the case, I'll start sharpening the knives for Egyptian treaty. Yes, I shall. Sharpen your knives, Carlos. A bit paraphrased, but mostly me. Yeah, I trimmed down a little bit. I like that. Yeah, seriously, well done for that one, Eric. Well done. Why did I use Frost Arrow instead of actual repair? Because when I Googled AutoCast Warcraft 3, this is the first one that came up, and I'm a lazy poo sometimes. It would be nice if they could steal ships from other players like pirates do. I could see that one. I could see that one. Might be kind of overloading it, but it could be a way... I won't say anymore. I have an idea for a later ship build that might get into that. More like Bjarka, but otherwise fairly good. Awesome. I'm glad that I'm not screwing it up too bad. I do think that with pirate boats and Rise of Tamerlane custom campaign last mission, yeah, that would be really cool. And I have a civilization in the not terribly distant future coming out that will have a very similar mechanic. Certainly watched it a lot. My name is Robbie. Thank you, Hans. Yeah. Putting the into Recraft. Hopefully that didn't peak the mic. You saw the role of the Danes in the Battle of Lake Pepos against the Novgorodians when you did the quiz? Yes, absolutely. And I do think that in this build of the Danes, they do have pretty okay cavalry. Like, definitely much better than other Scandinavians. All right, friendos, you ready to move on? How many do we got right now? We got 16 viewers? Hell yeah, this is fantastic turnout for my first stream. Thank you guys again for watching. I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you're having fun too. This is a fun format. I'm not going to do it all the time, but I think sprinkling it in for stuff like this, like the Recraft series, I think is a good way of going about it. Let's move on to the hunting dog. This was a build I was really surprised the amount of positive response there was to. Like, I thought people would think this was stupid, but a lot of people really liked it and had a lot of ideas on how to make it better. Like, overall, I'd say it was less controversial than my Arquebusier build. So first of all, the dog's running speed is now only 25% and it only works within line of sight of a target. This is not actually how hunting wolves work now, from what I understand. And that seems a little broken because you can just sprint across the map. So it now only works on when you're tasking the dog to attack a unit within its line of sight. Next, hunting dogs benefit half as much as normal cavalry from the bloodlines and husbandry technology. Zaster994 really pushed me in this direction, and he's right. Like, it is a little weird that the hunting dog is a unit that kind of benefits from 3 different buildings: town center, stable, and barracks. But I think that makes it kind of unique, and it does fit very well. But don't worry, I have nerfed it fittingly to match. The Warhound now has -1 dodge and doesn't get more in imp, and the dodge has less of a recharge. So they're less of a dodge tank, and instead actually have like an okay HP pool. Still not enough to be like a really good frontline unit by any means. Nextly, herdables in a dog line of sight now match its speed. This was a suggestion I think got a bunch of upvotes. It makes a ton of sense. I love the inclusion, and it gives you another reason to use them very early on to get your sheepers back, especially on maps like Ghost Lake, where there's a lot of far-flung sheep that you actually want to grab quickly. Next, you can pet the doggy. Villagers can now be tasked onto a dog to pet them and restore their HP. It's a very slow restoring rate. This is mostly going to be an Easter egg, but we have an animation for it. They can use the forager animation, you know, the like thing. You can just use that on the dog. Won't even have to do like a whole new animation set for them. I think it would be lovely. And a bunch of people requested that one. Nextly, if you train a Warhound from a barracks instead of a town center, it takes like substantially longer to train. This should make them a little harder to mass up late game. Nextly, the hunting horn technology now costs +50 wood. It's a little bit faster to research, and you now research it at the mill. Actually, I think it's slower to research now. Can't remember if that's plus or minus. A bunch of people said there's no reason to get hunting horn because you need to use your TC. That's a really good point, and it took me some convincing because I really liked the idea of the trade-off, but overall it's probably just safer to have it at the mill and give it a little bit more of a cost to compensate. So hunting horn now works like this. I also updated the civilization availability for the doggos and loose threads, blah, 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 some stuff like that. An open question, a couple of them for you guys. So I got a bunch of really great suggestions from commenters that I want to hear your take on, either in chat now, in comments later, whatever else. First of all, Bjarke recommended that we have a regional hunting cheetah variant. These were used, quite commonly used, in parts of Africa and the Middle East and India. And so having maybe the hunting dog promote into a hunting cheetah, kind of weird, or having it be just a replacement regional, or something else entirely, could all be ways of going about this. I like the idea a lot, but I want to see whether you guys think it would be too much. Nextly, a capstone technology of some kind for the hunting dog line. Something like pure breeds. And my idea behind pure breeds was to make it something kind of like Siege Engineers-ish, where it was just like an Imperial Age technology that really made it feel strong. You know what I mean? But also would benefit team-wide dogs and give allies access to your powerful dogs, because part of what made dog breeds so valuable, or pure breeds made dog breeds very valuable and desired as commodities that could then be traded to other civilizations. So I thought some sort of team-oriented capstone tech could be kind of fun. And lastly, a commenter, Mr. Guy, recommended a technology to allow hunting dogs, instead of having a big line of sight, to kind of be able to briefly detect enemy movement in fog of war, or like follow tracks left by enemies on the ground. Kind of like in StarCraft 2, the Terran signal tower, like detection towers. I don't really know what they're called. Now, I think this is an extremely cool idea, but it might just be too much sauce. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about it. So again, hunting cheetah, pure breeds capstone technology, and then like a guard dogs or tracking dogs technology to let dogs kind of see movement or see tracks into the fog of war. I'd like to hear your thoughts on them. And thanks, as always, to Will Ferris, Leif Calderay, Manu K, Bjarke Kjær, Sindelmina, Mr. Guy, JH, Jack Opolsky, Zaster994, Ira Shanch, Jason Smith, and many, many others for all the input on this build. There were a lot of comments on this one that had a lot of very excited ideas. And I'm really happy how this one turned out. This was such a goofy little unit, but people seem to really like how it turned out. Let's take a little sippy. Let's take a look at chat before we move on. Eric, I certainly would like this format too. Thank you, Eric. I'm enjoying myself. Doggies, yeah. Like this format in general. Civilization 6. What would be the sound for petting animals? Reuse or new sound for every civilization? I have no idea. You know, Carlos, it would be kind of cute if we could just like stick like a or something in there. That would be very, very fun. I could see something like that going. Petting is a must, I agree. Jen XOP, almost 3K views on your Swiss video. Thank you. I really appreciate the congratulations, Jen. I was, like I said earlier, I was kind of mortified that it was that video that got all the views, but hey, you know, the spice must flow, the channel must grow. I'm pleased. Spitting Lava ranged unit does emotional damage. Brilliant cross-sell. Regional skins for doggies. I agree with that, Harpo. Regional skins are just important, period. I want to have a video on it at some point. They're just, for me, I would always use them. I think they would be very nice. Doggies and kitties. What about Spanish supremacy dogs? Good point, Bjarke. I actually put this in the civilization availability. Thank you for reminding me. That supremacy would benefit Spanish dogs to a lesser degree, but still a substantial degree, making Spanish dogs like some of the best in the game, late game. Isn't it still very spammable? But I have to congratulate you for convincing me that dogs can work in AoE too. Thank you, Tomasz. Yeah, it would be quite spammable, to the point where I was even considering making it such that building hounds from a barracks also cost gold, because it doesn't make sense to me that you could just like fling 200 dogs at your opponent. It just doesn't feel right, if that makes sense. So still a work in progress on that one. If you guys have thoughts I'd like to hear. Jen, you're welcome. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Jen XOP. You are very kind to say so. Maybe Swiss video burst through the algorithm. It was the first one I saw. I think it just got randomly algorithmed. Like, the graph for that one was like... YouTube analytics are very fun to see. If you guys want, after we finish this, I'll show you my YouTube analytics. I like poking around with them. And I know that some YouTubers are like weirdly protective of them, but that's stupid. I got nothing to hide. Let's move on. Carlos, you got that knife ready? It's Egyptians time. First of all, they're classified as an archers and cavalry civilization. This is not the most important change, but was probably a necessary one. I had them classified as an elite civilization, but as commenter Zaster994 pointed out, their champions are mediocre. Excuse me. And so why bother... Again, excuse me. So why bother giving them that tag if it's only applying to 2 units that are really only applying to archers and cavalry? So that's the first change. Now on to the good stuff. So that close range archer damage bonus, I love. I love the flavor of it so much. But a bunch of people pointed out that, man alive, this would be broken. And I have 2 changes that I think will help it a lot. 1, it now does -1 damage in Imperial Age. And more importantly, it only does the bonus damage at 1 range, not 2 range anymore, which will make it much harder to actually get maximum oomph out of it. It also no longer benefits the skirmisher line, which will make the Egyptians much worse in Trash Wars, because I think that skirmishers with that thing would be disgusting. Commodity bonus. The old Egyptians trading commodity bonus removed from the civilization. You guys convinced me. I was trying to give the Egyptians a shitty economy, but in so doing, I gave them 3 good economy bonuses. I am done. And so that's gone. Am I happy to remove it? No. That's my favorite Saracen bonus, but I do think it could fit very, very well on other civilizations, and this should properly stick the Egyptians into the whole of bad economy that they belong, along with a couple other changes I'll talk about later. Next, the treaty bonus. Whoa! This was probably the single most controversial bonus I've ever put in a video, and it was deserved. I didn't think about the douche potential, and I'm a dummy for not. It now only applies to a 12-tile radius around your starting town center. Kind of like on Nomad, but it makes your villagers immune, not just about placement. Now, it will still be good. I think it will still be quite strong. And I did a bunch of tests on random maps. 12 tiles is just enough to grab like a chunk of most of your starting resources, but is rarely going to grab all of them. So it's going to be a lot more risky. And I think I got it right this time, guys. Can't be used for douching anymore. Get out of here. It also would have a very clearly displayed radius visible to all players, as well as a timer, so people could see how long the treaty lasted for, which I think is a necessary addition. Ooh, excuse me. The university bonus is now been nerfed. It still does the same thing, it just is a little less good at it. And their unique Abtal unit, it now costs a little more wood and is a little bit slower. Why did I do this? Well, a couple people pointed out that, especially since the Abtal benefits more from the archer bonus damage bonus, that would make it very, very devastating, even at close ranges. And as such, it also no longer does bonus damage to levies, so it has no bonus damage whatsoever, and it has a slightly less benefit from the civilization bonus effect overall. In summary, the Abtal will still be an incredibly good brawler archer that is very hard to kill. I think that this will make it more of a consideration to... What am I trying to say here? I think this will make it such that arbalests are more of a consideration instead of the Abtal, or have them be like a front line, rather than them being like probably the best thing to make in most situations. Next, their tech tree, their poor tech tree. Can we get some F's in the chat, boys, for the Egyptians' tech tree? No more bombard cannon, or elite cannon galleon, or heavy demo. No more bowsaw! They lose bowsaw. I think that this is the thing that's going to make their economy suck, in addition to losing the commodity bonus. The gold shaft mining will obviously hurt, but bowsaw, even from what I have seen at professional levels of the game, is a very useful technology. And since, I mean, Egypt did not have a great lumber economy at any time, I think it's justified. And again, should reinforce the civilization identity that I was trying to go for. They do still keep that cheaper market thing as a team bonus. I think I forgot to put it on this document, but it will be displayed properly on the main civilization doc, but I did slightly nerf the market team bonus. It now is like 25 wood more expensive, but still a nice discount to your team. So, last of the major changes I made is that someone commented that why not buy bars as a potential Egyptians campaign? And I was like, that's such a good idea. Obviously buy bars. He was like incredibly cool. And even though I love Shajar al-Dur as a character, I think buy bars is probably a better fit than her. I still want the girl though. She's awesome. And thanks as always to Bloomchen B, Jason Smith, Eric DW, Sim Belmina, Carlos Martinez Caballé, Tristan Oliver, Edelweiss, Divicos Power, and many, many others for input on this Egyptians build. This is without a doubt the most broken build I have ever made, even including my old ones. It needed some help, it needed some love, and fingers crossed, I got it this time. Let's see what you guys think over in the chat. I don't know if you said it, but I said, darn you, fatherhood a little while. I didn't see that. Yeah. I love being a dad, but it does mean that I am penalized in the old IQ department. Do you want to fling 200 dogs at your opponent, Bjarka? I kind of do too. It just is a little silly. Definitely an algorithm thing. The Swiss video is the first to be recommended to me. Yeah, just lucky. Robbie debut. Would you consider making a Civ tier list from coolness perspective? That's a great idea, Hans. I could see doing that, especially if other people had interest in it. My question would be, would you want to see me do one on existing civilizations or on mine? Archer and Cavalry Civ, interesting. Never had it before. That one I had pointed out. Yeah. Also can't be douched, but that's the whole point. Yeah. No more douching. I hate douching. 12 tiles is still there if you delete and rebuild. If so, Egyptian douche is still OP, but I like the tree rework. No. The starting TC does not apply to anyone built after you begin the game. I use this term starting TC on I think I've used it on builds before. If not, I have builds coming out that also use it. So if you delete and rebuild, no benefit. And for Nomad, it would be the first TC that you place would have this. F's in the chat, thank you. Comment, this video is so wild. Had so much fun reading them. I know. I got absolutely roasted. If you guys are interested, let me know when we're done with this, and I'll tell you a funny story about getting roasted in the comments section before I was doing YouTube. Divikos says, for Uri, is it Uri or Yuri? I think it's Uri. I wanted to add, on Battlefield, the Uri battalions walked with the sound of horns representing the bull on the flag. It seems that this sound was terrific. Burgundians still remember today. That is so badass, Divikos. Holy shit, that's cool. The enemy moves against us, man the walls. Yeah, exactly. Buy bars would be awesome. Of course I meant the fatherhood thing as a joke. No doubt about that. And it's a fun thing to laugh about. I want to see the Goths in F tier in terms of their coolness perspective. The Goths have, in my opinion, one thing going for them from the coolness perspective. And it's not the one that you think about. The thing that they have from the coolness perspective is that they were, in my opinion, the civilization that opened the door to late antiquity being like applicable and acceptable for Age of Empires 2. I think if we didn't have the Goths, we wouldn't get the Huns. And it would kind of close off a whole bunch of time from us to play with. Because without the Goths, I think the AoE 2 relevant time frame starts at like 600 to 700 AD rather than like 400 AD. But other than that, poo-poo. So still no crop rotation for Egyptians. They will suffer an imperial. Yes, exactly, Divicos. I think that their military will still kick major ass. And as such, I think they need the crappy imperial economy to not be very dominant. Gods in the funny tier. Coolness perspective. Magyar #1 just for the Hussar. It's Magyars, right? I can't remember. Now, here's the thing. The Hussar is cool, except for the feckin' name. Like, that, I love how it plays. I love using the unit, but come on. You could have done something better. It's the same thing with Genoese crossbowmen. I don't like those either. Well, rating your own civs would be awkward. No, tier list format is very clickbaity, so making one on the existing civs might be it. You're a clever guy. Let me write that down. I have had this notebook since I was in high school. Okay. Hans recommends coolness tier list for existing civs. Okay. Treaty bonus, I pointed out, I meant... Oh, no, you're not being rude at all, Eric. Don't you worry about it. So the Goths are like the border between AoE 1 and 2. Exactly. G in Magyar is soft, I believe, so it's like Magyar? I'm not sure. That could be right. Well, regardless. I try my best to pronounce things correctly, and I appreciate you guys being patient with me. It's important to me to get it as right as I can. Tomas says, well, if I recall correctly, Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, Koreans, Aztecs, and Incas are all DLC civs. They are arguably some of the most recent. Yes, absolutely. And for that reason, I put the Age of Empires 2 relevant time frame from 400 AD to 1600 AD. And everything in between is fair game. Though, if a civilization was only really relevant from like 1500 on, I'm kind of borderline on it. But like for stuff like the Aztecs, they were making huge waves from like 1400 onward, and obviously their predecessors were existing in the region for ages beforehand. I kind of feel like the devs only pushed the timeline further in the DLCs. Absolutely. I doubt they're going to go further than they are now, just because we have so much we can play with within this time frame. I meant the aesthetics of the Hussar. Yeah, I agree. They're a very cool looking unit. And I love the Magyar shield. I think it looks so beautiful. I think that style of shield is called an Ungarischer in the rest of Europe. All right, let's move on. Next build. The Moravians. This was a build that I didn't think would get like a lot of interest, and it was, of the recent videos, it didn't do like brilliantly, right? But the people who watch it were like, wow, this is so cool. I'd never even heard of them before. Nor had I. Desert Monk, this one's for you, bud. You introduced me to a whole section of history I knew nothing about. And it turns out that I mostly got the Moravians right, from what it seems. So first of all, I made some clarifications about how the team bonus and the unique unit work. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about those now. Take a look if you're interested. The main thing people were concerned about on this build was the technology glagolitic script. So I've overhauled it substantially based on people's suggestions. First of all, it doesn't give you all of the technologies other people have for free, but they do open up for you to research yourself at a very steep discount. So you still have to do it manually. You can still double up on certain technologies. And now instead of getting 100% of other people's relic gold as well as them, you only get 50% of what they're getting, meaning that you still have reason to go out and get relics for yourself. But if your teammates can get them, ooh, cha-ching, you get all sorts of gold. I also have extended the regional Druzhnik line and Gord to the Bohemians, as recommended by Tomasz over in chat right now. And I have a couple of notes about the history section. Now, Tomasz is going to be responsible for a lot of this, but first of all, a bunch of people said, Nitra, the Principality of Nitra, that's in Slovakia. I am dumb. I say fuck, because I completely botched that one. That one's on me. But as mentioned, Tomasz Stanek in comments had a bunch of fantastic feedback. Let's see if I can get all this right. Tomasz, you clarify to me if I'm getting this right here. So first of all, I said that the city of Brno was like the center of Moravia. It wasn't actually until the 1400s. Like before then, it was mostly just various settlements being watched over by different forts that would later give rise to other more proper cities with those old forts as the foundation. He clarifies that, like, for example, the capital, you could say, would be a fortress. What's that? How do you say this? Mikolčice? Claire, catch me if I'm saying that right, Tomasz. It would be the fortress of Mikolčice as probably a better representative of what the capital, quote unquote, of Greater Moravia was. But probably you couldn't really pick a capital because of just how the region was laid out at this time. Another note, Silesia is more Polish than it is Czech, and in his opinion definitely merits a civ. Keep an eye out for that one in future. Additionally, the Moravians were not federati of Rome. Rome never made any claim to the area after the Marcomannic Wars. And the Protoslavs really only moved in after Rome had vacated the area. Rome did interact with some of the predecessors to the Moravians, but having them feature in its story in history was really just a mistake on my part. Let's see. Moravians were also not true Orthodox. That schism happened well after. They just kind of laid the groundwork of it. And lastly, the existence of Samo is disputed and may well have been very heavily romanticized. I think that's all of the history notes he had. Tomasz is an incredibly accomplished dude who knows a lot about this. I think he is actually a trained academic in this, specifically the field of Czech history. And so I default to him to know whether or not I got all of these clarifications correct. In summary, as per usual, my history sections are not always accurate. And I appreciate you guys clarifying where you can catch them. Thanks, as always, to a bunch of great commenters. Tomasz Stanek, of course, Hans, Desert Monk, Lorenzo M, David GG, Bjarke Kjær, Eric DW, Daniel Munsaka, Simbelmina, Divikos Power, and many, many others for input on this particular build. Look, I only had a couple of big changes, guys. I actually did this one kind of okay, which was a relief coming after the Egyptians. Speaking of which, we're going to move on. Well, before, let's take a look at comments. The U in Spanish is like the U in Spanish, Italian, Portuguese. I don't really know how to pronounce that either, Divikos. So I'm going to go with Uri for now until I'm clarified otherwise. Over 1,000 years of time frame. Yes, it's kind of redonkulous, Eric. I would love to see... In my ideal world, we would have a late antiquity age of empires that just goes up until 1,000, and then 1,000 to 15, 1600 as another one, but this is not a perfect world. Let's see. Moravians, can I borrow your homework? Sicilians, sure, but change it up just a bit. Yeah, I have heard of them from Honfoglalas. Yeah, it's a scenario. That's the only place I'd ever even seen the name before I did the research for it. But thanks, Desert Monk, for pointing me towards this civilization. Moravians by far my favorite. I think I said in the comment, but I want to say it again. Thank you, Carlos. Very kind of you. Did you know that winged hussars having bonus versus gunpowder is a reference to Polish writers saving the city of Vienna being taken by Ottomans? I did actually know that one. I think it's a very, very neat reference that I'm happy to have. Also, Hans, I'm not going to pronounce that, but I'm assuming you're saying something nice, and I will say thank you. Diviko says, the most beautiful hussar for you guys, regular, Magyar, or Polish, Lithuanian. Ooh, that's tricky. I'd probably have to give it to the Magyar one. Tomasz says, maybe Mikolčice would help his pronunciation. Mikolčice? How's that sound? The modern cities were founded usually around 13th, 14th century. Brno was relevant, but will only grow in significance later. Thank you. Hopefully I did justice to the rest of your history clarifications, man. People are agreeing that Magyar is definitely the most pretty hussar. Also, so Glagolitic script makes it more beneficial for allies to pick up. Exactly, Eric. And makes the Moravians a little more of a team player, which I think is good. It fits their history pretty well. Well, all the hussars are winging in the game. Definitely. Tomasz says, one more minor nitpick, which I didn't think I mentioned. The Glagolitic script is, well, Glagolitic. It's not Cyrillic, though it definitely influenced Cyrillic. Thank you. Very, very good point as well. I hope you still like the name Glagolitic script. I think it sounds very cool, and I think is a nice reference to the early roots of that before it eventually would evolve. All right, you guys ready to move on? Moving on to, I think, one of the most elaborate builds I've ever done on the channel, the Polynesians alongside the commenter Simbelmina. I was nervous about this one. I thought people would be like, wow, what the hell is this? It's going to be stupid and weird. Why are they in the game? But people were actually really positive about this. And I would actually say that this is the build that has required the fewest changes of all time. Who would have frickin' thought it, right? With like 2 trillion regional units and some of the weirdest mechanics in the game, as well as being one of the like least likely candidates for an Age of Empires civilization. I'm really pleased with how the Polynesians turned out. Simbelmina was a great collaborator. You guys, every time one of you guys collaborates with me, it's fantastic. But anyways, let's move on. First one, commenter, I think it was Bjarka actually, noted that if a catamaran dies, does its pin end early? And the answer to that should be yes. So I've made that change. Also, I think this was also from Bjarka. When you research Kailau, your infantry gain a unique idle animation showing them doing like the actual dance, the war dance, and there would be like a little bar showing their charge of Kailau above their heads. So 2 little aesthetic changes, but important ones, I think. Also, Eric mentioned in the comments that I kind of overstated how bad the Polynesians' archer line was in the video. He is totally right. Their crossbows would be totally usable in Castle Age, even if they were Garbo late game. I mentioned that I had kind of wanted to not give them crossbow. Excuse me, I got a hiccup. Okay. I had mentioned in the video that I kind of didn't want to give them crossbow and just give them Garbo archers. But as is, they still will have pretty bad archers late game and will only really use them in early and the early stages of mid. So, my mistake there. And some open questions for you guys. I'd like to hear what you think about these ones. First of all, do you think that the Gambeson's technology should hit the long pike? I'm not sure about this one. Why am I not sure about it? Well, the long pike has the potential to be disgustingly powerful. Now, when Simbelmina and I were discussing this unit, he was like, careful, Kameyuks are actually really, really good, but obviously fabric shields is probably a big part of that. And so we kind of toyed around with how to make them a little more fair, and with the assumption that they wouldn't be as tanky as they are because of fabric shields. And I think we got a good one here, but if we make Gambesons hit them, it's like a mini fabric shields, and I don't know if it would be too much. So I'd like to hear your thoughts there. And secondly, a bunch of people, I think Diego Ramirez was one of the people who said, why isn't the Moai the wonder for the Polynesians? The best answer I have is that was like our number 2 pick, and it's less known who exactly built the Moai than the what was it? Hamanga Imawi. I think that's the name of the current wonder, which we know exactly why and how and where it was built. But the Moai are obviously beautiful and very, very iconic. So if you guys think Moai deserve to be the wonder, we'll make that change. Also, shout out to Bjarke. He did amazing testing for this civilization. He and Simbelmina had this like glorious comment chain talking about the pros and cons of the pufferfish helmets technology, and this mad lad went into the editor and simulated kind of what it would look like to have that technology at play. Bah, I am blown away, and he deserves praise for it. Thanks, Bjarke. That was unbelievable, dude. And also, of course, thanks to Diego Ramirez, Eric DW, Wei Fan, and others for input on this Recraft. And of course, huge shout outs to my collaborators, Lorenzo M., Johannes Elfsen, and here, Simbelmina, for all the great work that you guys have done. Look at that! So few changes, guys, and most of them are clarifications. Let's move on to another wacky one. You guys thought the Egyptians were weird. Well, the Novgorodians, I think, might have been even crazier. Like, I was expecting them to go over worse than the Egyptians did. Although, before I do so, let's take a quick look at commenterinos. Tomas says semi-okay pronunciation. I'll take it. What's a pin again, says Eric. So that was when a catamaran first attacks another ship in melee, they stick it in place so it can't run away. It can keep attacking, but it has to stay there. And so that's how the pin mechanic worked. Crosshill says, I haven't even thought about scripts since high school. I do know they were used across much of the Slavic world, so you could play around with it with other Slavic states as well. That's not a bad point at all, especially once we get to the point where we can start doing more ambitious regional reworks. That sounds quite fun. Oh, thank you, Bjarke. Clarifying the pin before I even needed to. Carlos says, Kamiaks are good with Insane Micro versus a bad player. Once I reach 1700, I've never seen Kamiaks TBH. To be honest, that's kind of the impression I got. Like, I haven't played competitive since HD, but in HD I was like almost 1800, right? Like, not great, but okay. And I never once saw Kamiaks used. And I played a lot of Incas back in the day. So I didn't feel like we had to be too careful, but Sembelmina seemed to indicate that he thought Kamiaks were more of a threat, especially at very high levels of play, so we'll see. Tomasz says, Cross-Ill Glagolitic script was created to allow the Slavs to learn theology without being knowledgeable in Latin and Greek. Likely wasn't ever intended to become daily use script. I think these guys still fall under the Polynesian tag. Moai should at least be present as a scenario editor unit. Yeah, absolutely true. And totally cross-ill. And Tomasz says, though as late as 15th century, it was used to communicate with Slavs further east, even though it was technically banned as a church language by that time. That's so interesting. I had no idea. Hans says, honestly, I'm not sure wearing a pufferfish helmet would have any other effect than looking funny. Probably true. I'm sure it gave better protection than just face tanking a smack. But we're taking a little bit of a historical embellishment here, because there are some like really, really cool Polynesian armors that they made, and the pufferfish helmet is just one of the most iconic, as well as kind of silly looking. You're right. Yeah. Don't worry, Eric. You're not rambling at all. Just how it goes. I mean, I'm practically rambling. You guys are getting to see kind of what it looks like when I'm filming a video. I'm just blabbing constantly and just I edit the bits that seem best into something that resembles a coherent mass. Let's move on to the Novgorodians, shall we? Their training bonus. Oh dear. That was a problem, wasn't it, guys? Again, I gotta shout out Bjark here. He, once again, replicated what the training bonus would look like, both the 100-100 version and this new 3366 version. He sent me the files. I played around with them. 100-100 was redonkulous. Like, that was way too much. The eco was just destructive. But now, the training bonus is now 33% better trained economy, big reduction, and 66 penalty training time for military. And military includes towers now. I was talking with a commenter about this, and even though it kind of sucks that would make it harder for towers to be used defensively, you do have gourds, and so you still will be able to protect yourself. You just can't tower rush at all. Having played around with this bonus in practice now, it feels great on the booming side. Like, on a map like Arena, this would be gross, but the military penalty is actually substantial. Like, I tried my best to rush multiple times with this. I tried knights, I tried crossbows, I even tried tower rushing for fun. Even when you have double the villages of your opponent, it's very hard to do. So I think 3366 will work. We'll see, though. Let's move on. So a couple of clarifications for how the town bell mechanics work. If you re-ring the bell, villagers will run back to the town center to re-transform. They won't just snap back, snap forth on the spot. And you can manually task a villager to the town center to deconvert them early at this point. Next, a bunch of people mentioned that the Piatinia technology was not very good. So now, even though, like, obviously the self-building buildings is cool, it's more of a novelty than actually being impactful, right? And so the cost has now been reduced a bit, and it boosts the training time of your boyar line. So Druzhnik, boyar, scion, boyar. It effectively negates the military training penalty just for the boyar line. This was because I had another commenter say, wow, their military is kind of bland. Can we sex it up a little bit? And I think that this technology kind of signals that the backbone of your army should be boyars. Because also your unique unit, the Tisiatsky, cannot train boyars because they are not a barracks, archery range, or stable unit. And as such, I think that this makes their military just have a little bit more zest in it, which it seems to have been lacking. Next, their unique technology, Sovet Gospod, or actually, a commenter clarified, it probably would be pronounced Soviet Gospod. It's just that the Y is not visible in how it's transliterated. Applies to all players. It makes it open season on trading for the entire map. It'd be a public message and a timer, and the message would go.
The secret agendas of the Novgorodian players' Soviet Gospod has resulted in cheap market prices for all. Take advantage of them while you still can.
Dun, dun, dun. I think that would be very fun. And not only will this make Soviet Gospod not disgusting late game, but it still allows it to be an advantage for you. If you time it well, you will know when you'll be able to make great use for it and when you might take your enemy off guard. So they can't like do all the trades they want in time. It's a lot to juggle and it's a very short window, like 30 seconds. I think this will make the technology way more interesting, a lot more skill testing, and kind of introduce a new feel to the game than we really have on any other civilization. Nextly, this is a weird one. They no longer get the technology banking. Why? Because, as a bunch of people pointed out, even though slinging is banned at tournament level, this would be the best sling civilization in the game by far. And obviously, did the Novgorodians have banking? Duh. Yeah, they certainly did. But we kind of have references to how their merchant economy worked in other elements of the civilization. And this way, it just makes them not too disgusting on the whole sling front. Just a little bit worse. Still, I think they would have the best eco in the game, bar none. This one technology penalty will mean nothing to them. Additionally, I had a commenter recommend that I give them a new wonder because the one I picked was nice, probably a second best, but this one is so much nicer. Look at the St. Sophia Cathedral. It has all the things I wanted. Those beautiful white walls, the silver domes, the golden one at top, just so pretty and bigger and grander than the one I had. So just strict upgrade in all ways. This is the new wonder. Additionally, the commenter who recommended that to me was the commenter Manu K. He is the master of all things Novgorod, and I credit him a lot to giving me some history clarifications I'd like to share with you guys. So not only did he recommend a bunch of the changes that I made here, but he also has this very, very cool Alexander Nevsky campaign that you guys can go out and play right now. I think it was on Ornlu's channel at one point. And he actually shared with me that the Mongol relationship with Novgorod was actually a lot more interesting than I really gave it credit in the history section. So the Novgorod preemptively submitted to them, but then heavily integrated Mongol military tactics and culture, which I did get right. In fact, Alexander Nevsky himself had a fantastic relationship with the Mongols and may have even been adopted by Batu Khan, the leader of the Mongols in the region at the time. That was part of the reason why he had such a relatively easy time contending with the Mongols while also dealing with the Teutonic and Swedish invasions. So just a really cool piece of history that I wanted to make sure to share. And again, shout out to Manu K. In addition to that sexy art, he also has a great campaign that you guys should all go and try out. Beyond him, however, thanks go to Foxy NL, Tristan Oliver, David Adams, Guru Gru, Ziplaki Zongor, I think, Manu himself, and Simbelmina, as well as many, many others for all of the fantastic input on this civilization. And Bjarke for his awesome design and testing that he did with the training bonus thing. That was just so cool to see. And with that, we come to the end. Thank you guys so much for watching. Woo, we did it. First stream, and I actually managed to pull it off. We've been live for an hour and 45 odd minutes. I'm going to catch up with chat, and then let's talk. I want to give you an opportunity to ask me whatever you want to ask me, to talk back and forward. If you guys have any things you want to share, want to get my take on, I would be more than happy to do so. But first, let's see what you guys thought about the Novgorodians changes. Okay, Carlos on the subject of Kamyaks. If you give me Kamyaks 1500, they are monsters, but good player. Make them useless. Used to play Incas a lot. Best civ when the blacksmith bonus was in feudal. I loved that thing too. Absolutely. Eric says, so are gourds built slower as well as towers? No, only towers, not gourds or castles. So you can still castle drop, but since gourds have to be made within loss of a TC castler gourd, you can't drop with them. Han says, Tomasz, wait, are you the Dr. Tomasz Stein? Is that a the? I'm not, though I am from the same city as he, which is very silly. That's so cool. Bjark says, have you tried it in PvP? I have not, but I have sent it to Simbelmina, actually, to see what he thinks of it. I played against highest level AI a couple of times just to see what would happen, so obviously it's not a perfect test. Still really good, though, dude. Tomasz says, to clarify, I wouldn't really call myself an academic as I don't have a title yet, but of course I do have experience reading and writing research papers. My experience is mostly just archaeology and popular history education, I guess. That's much more qualification than I have, Tomasz. You are an academic to me, no doubt, and more than qualified to talk about history sections in YouTube videos on Age of Empires too. Eric says, did you come up with this message? Yes, though you inspired me to do it, Eric. Murat, hey, good to see you, Murat. How you doing, man? Bjarke said, I posted a suggestion for Piatini in the Novgorodians video, but I don't know if you read it. It's about making it give the Tisiatski access to imp upgraded units. The upgrades would still be needed to research separately. I did see it, Bjarke. I'm sorry I didn't respond to it. I'm not sure about that one, just because I've seen so many different opinions on the Tisiatski. I had one commenter just insist it was busted. It was so strong. And another commenter said, wow, this thing is crap. I would never build it. So I didn't really want to touch the Tisiatski yet until we had some more information on which side of those is actually kind of correct. Plus, having Piatini buff the Boyar line, I felt like was a way to point the civilization in another military direction to just give them a little more verticality to their gameplay. Hope that makes sense, man. Didn't mean to blue ball you or anything. Carlos says the Nevsky campaign was great. I liked it a lot. Yeah, it was awesome. Bjarke said this was fun. Thank you. I really appreciate you saying so, man. This is really enjoyable for me. Tomasz said, Robbie, I want to ask if you speak some other languages. Your pronunciation is usually very good. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So I did take 7 years of French, but I don't really have it anymore. I think much more important, though, is that when I was growing up, my family rented house to probably 50 different foreign exchange students from all different countries, with kind of the implicit understanding that those foreign exchange students, in return for having very cheap rent, would hang out with me and teach me a bit. And so I picked up a lot about accents and little bits and bobs about other languages. And not to mention, I mean, my wife is Chinese, and so I've learned a bit of Mandarin. I'm good at picking up accents and phrases, and I can sing in other languages if you give me enough time to listen to the songs. Like, I learned a bunch of Portuguese, like Brazilian Portuguese songs growing up, some German, some other stuff. So I don't know any other languages, but I'm a parrot. I'm good at mimicking and imitating. And I appreciate you saying so, man. It really means a lot. It's important to me that I pronounce things believably, or like passably. Harpo says, still think the Tisiatski is super overpowered. It'd be so hard to track down all of them. Yeah, exactly. Harpo, you were the guy who was like, wow, this thing's busted. And because of that, I didn't want to give the Tisiatski any more sauce until we kind of saw how it worked in like practice a little more. Eric says, do you think you could give us your favorite, least favorite official campaigns? Seems like when it comes to campaign protagonists, you try to pick ones that fight a lot of different civs. Let me write that down. Campaign tier list. Tier lists are big on YouTube, and I like doing them, so that could be a good idea. I definitely have a lot of opinions on them. I actually, early on, my wife and I started talking about me filming a video series before I knew what I was really doing with this channel, because she used to love watching me play Age of Empires campaigns, and afterwards I'd say, so what do you think, baby? And she'd be like, oh yeah, that was great, or that was ass. Like, I can still tell you her grades for a lot of scenarios. And so I was thinking about doing like a joint thing where I play through them and we both give our grades. But I don't know if that would be like too cutesy poo for people. I really appreciate the idea though, man. Gerardo says, what pre-Columbian civilizations are missing and which ones should be in the game? Wow, that's a big question, my man. In summary, a lot. I have a list somewhere. Let me pull it up real quick for you. Which tab am I in? There we go. You'll forgive me if I don't share this tab with you guys. I want to have some surprises kept. Well, there are obvious... I think the first big thing I would say in that regard is that the difference between Central American civilizations and South American civilizations are very substantial. Like, way more substantial than I ever knew before I made my Zapotec video, and a bunch of people in the comment section started sharing what they knew with me. For Central America, I think the big misses are the Purepecha, the Mixtecs, the Tlaxcalans, the Otomi, and then in South America, the Chimu and the Mapuches are the big misses. But there are others as well. And you can expect to see all of those at some point in the future on this channel. So that's my kind of summary. I hope that kind of makes sense to you. Carlo says, give us some leaks, some hints about the contest. Okay. I'll give 2. So one of the people who is in my highest consideration thus far has done a build on a recraft of one of my builds, and the civilization he chose was one of the civilizations that required the most changes from my original incarnation in my recrafting process. So he happened to do a build of a civilization that I kind of ate shit with when I was doing my own take on it. That's all. The only hint I'll give for now. Diego says Mapuche build. That's coming. I had a commenter say that he had some like insider info, like he actually had access to academic information about the Mapuche. So I'm kind of waiting to hear back from him before I go into it, because I don't think my research would do it justice. Crosshill says worst campaign is definitely Tariq, simply because the protagonists are disconnected from the events a lot, and it's missing the Battle of Toulouse. The Battle of Toulouse was just unforgivable. But I don't actually think Tariq is the worst. I think that the Tariq scenario where you're crossing the Pyrenees has potential to be the worst scenario in the game. Maybe it's just me, but that thing, I want to tear my hair out every time I play that. And that's saying a lot. Eric says, and I can think of a few where you certainly don't fight a lot of different civilizations. Looking at you, Pachacuti. It's a shame. The Pachacuti campaign was so fun, except for the fact that it's only Incas. Like, adding more South American civilizations, if no other reason, would be great, just to give poor Pachacuti some more interesting enemies to fight against. Tomas says second the Mapuche build, for sure. Divikos says, Crosshill, because of the infinite span of the units created in buildings on top of small hills to make them hard to destroy, is pretty annoying. Yeah, that is annoying. I fully agree with you on that one. That was one of the most annoying parts about that. In that campaign is my town Zaragoza. Twice still one of the worst. Yeah, it wasn't a fun one. I remember when it first came out, when African Kingdoms was released, and I was like pumped playing through all the scenarios. I loved the Sundiata campaign. Like, I don't know if other people like it as much as I did, but that might be a top 3 for me. Even though I don't think it's perfect by any means. I just remember I played Sundiata 1 on hard, having not played Age of Empires in 10 years, and I got my ass slapped in that scenario. Like, I got destroyed, and I played it for like 2 hours and finally won. It was like one of the most satisfying gaming experiences of my life. My wife walked into me, I was like, are you still playing that? I'm like, yes, I gotta kill them. The Sozo scouts, they're coming. Diego says Lautaro versus Pedro de Valdivia, or resisting Incan invasion of what's now Chile. Yeah, that's a good idea. I could totally see that. I want to know more about that part of history, though. Tyranitar says cutesy is good. Thank you. I like it. I mean, I know that my videos might have a little bit too much personality in them for some people, because it seems like this particular slice of Age of Empires content is more focused on the ideas rather than the people behind them. But I can't help it, man. Like, I'm a performer at heart. I'm a attention whore. Translation. Eric says, so is this potential campaign tier list a possibility? Yeah, it definitely is. Let me put down that Tyranitar says cutesy is okay. Tyranitar. Wifey. Nice. Yeah, I definitely like the idea. I'll ask my wife if she's up for it, and if not, I'll just do it myself. I can probably freehand a lot of them. And I could maybe do like a more heavily edited one, make it a little more fun. It's up to you guys, though. Gerardo says the Chimu are from my country in the north of Peru. Yeah, sick. Yeah, I've heard that they are like ridiculously important to the area and fought against the Quechua and Inca on many, many occasions. So I definitely want to do them for sure. Let's see. Crosshill says Andeans would be Mapuche, Chimu. It's definitely not Chance. Chance? Something? Muisca. So the Muisca I've heard a little bit about, but I think that I need to do more research before I can determine whether they are like, whether I can give them like a Polynesians treatment of, okay, they have some things that don't fit, something that do want me to give them a pass. So I'm not going to commit to the Muisca yet. Aymarans, I don't know them well at all. So that one I also can't commit to. Murad says, what do you think about the Kurds? I do want to do the Kurds. Obviously, my Egyptians build includes some stuff about the Kurds, but I do think that they can coexist, just because the Kurds had a very distinct approach. Like, they had a very discrete civilization before Salah ad-Din obviously kind of moved the major Kurdish dynasty to Egypt. And even after that, the Kurds still had impact. So I do want to do the Kurds at some point in future for sure. Har says, keep up the good work. Thank you, Harpo. You're the man. Tyranitar says, Sunjata, I liked it. Was good. Yodit was not as fun. Oh, yeah. Yodit sucked. I did not like that one. I like that one less than Tariq. Eric says, one thing I don't like about playing campaigns is that the AI often don't fully upgrade their non-units so often they just fold over and die easily. Oh, yeah. I think that campaigns are not the way I prefer to play the game most of the time, but I always want to play every campaign through once. Unfortunately, the most recent ones that released, like when my son was born, that went out the window. So I haven't been able to play through a bunch of the DLC ones yet. So if I ever do this campaign tier list, maybe that's going to be something I have to do for the first time. Divico says the crossing of the Pyrenees could be good if only the Berbers could use something like, I don't know, a technology that counteracts the loss of HP. Something like regeneration for camels, for example. Oh, wait! That is a great idea, Divicos. Thomas Peck says, what do you think of Lombards getting the regional Viking unit? It's a great question, Thomas. I think the regional Viking unit does belong on some civilizations that aren't explicitly Scandinavian. Like, an example would be, I strongly considered it for the Novgorodians. For the Lombards, I think that their identity was far enough migrated from that by the time they got to Italy, it doesn't make as much sense. Plus, I do give them a bunch of other kind of tangential rating benefits in their civilization bonuses, and I don't want them to be as focused on water. So for them, I'm not sure. Other Germanic peoples, that's a strong consideration. Good question, man. In your next civs, you can also give examples for AI names. I know you kind of say important figures in the possible campaigns, but adding some more can be good. It's a cool idea. Let me make a note of that. Carlos, AI player names. I think I might do a poll on that, Carlos. Really appreciate the suggestion, though, man. That's a cool one. Eric says, like some Paladin Civ, AI won't even get Paladins outside of post-imp ones. The only one where they actually research Paladin is in TheoryRecraft 5, and it's silly. It's very silly. I feel like there are ways to make campaign AI better and more flexible, but I don't know how much they want to prioritize that, because I feel like campaigns are an incredibly important part of Age of Empires, right? But on average, they're going to tend to appeal to a more casual audience. And because of that, I feel like the devs are like, okay, the casual audience is like already pretty happy with the campaign experience, so we don't need to do more with that. I'm not sure. That's entirely a guess. I would like to see it upgraded, though. Tomasz says, Muisca had some great pottery. I don't know what that means for Age of Empires, but everyone should Google Muisca pottery. Okay, I absolutely will. Let me see. Muisca pottery. Oh, wow. Wow, that's so cool. Actually, let me stick this here. Can you guys see this okay? I think you can see it okay. Do you see this nose? Look at this dude. Look at this guy. Holy shit. He even has like little veins sticking out. I don't think this is supposed to be Muisca pottery, though. This is beautiful, though. Wow. Yeah, this pottery is... Pottery does not a civilization make, but it is a very good sign. Yeah, these are really sophisticated. Cool. Thanks for the suggestion, man. That's really sick. Okay, what else we got? Thanks for the shout out on the Polynesians. Of course, Diego. I really try to credit people for the good ideas they have. I know I sometimes flub or let things like fall through the cracks, but I really appreciate it when you guys give suggestions. I think everyone who has been involved with the channel has made it better than how it was before. And I think that is a trend that will continue for a while. Let's see. Crosshaul. Chanka. The guys are the main enemy for most of the Incan campaign. Good idea. Let me put that down. Chanka. Pottery. Thank you. I'm trying to spare you guys takada typing noises. Eric says non-unique units. Yeah, exactly. Dear Mirza. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Gives a little wave. Good to see you. Says, my man, may you be my history teacher. I think I'd be a crappy history teacher. I think I'd be an enthusiastic one, but I definitely would need someone to help me research things. Like, if it was just a matter of people plop stuff in front of me and I just motor mouth about it, maybe that. But I think you deserve a much more qualified person. Diego says, in other games like Rise of Nations, Axis and Allies, there's an attrition damage when you cross frontiers. Could you see that happening in new builds? Ooh. Now I could. That's sick. I love that idea, Diego. I feel like people will rage at a mechanic like that because it sounds very annoying, but I think if done right, that could be fantastic. Great suggestion. Divico says, in each campaign, you should say at least once, this mission is made for this civilization. Like Almeida 4, where the Feitorias save you. It's made for Portuguese. Maghreb Kevils could be the Berber one. Yeah, like a campaign should showcase the civilization. That's why I feel like, as much as I like El Cid as a character, shitty campaign protagonist. Like, really bad idea, because it doesn't showcase the Spanish. It's more of like a biopic of this one guy on this whirlwind adventure. So I feel like you're right. A campaign should showcase the civilization and allow you to really explore what makes it good and special. And there are some campaigns that do that well, and some that don't. Carlos says, once Return to Rome drops, are we going to get new civs from that timeline? We'll see what Return to Rome brings, but I've been thinking about doing ancient epic civilizations for quite a while. I'd love to do them. I feel like I might actually be more interested in antiquity than I am in the medieval era. I love them both, of course, but antiquity just appeals to me, man, And so I could definitely see that, even though I want to obviously focus on AoE 2, at least for now, until I get more of a foothold. The other big one I really want to dabble in at some point is Age of Mythology, because I love history, right? I love mythology even more. And world mythology, I would say, is like the one topic I feel maybe not most confident in. Among the humanities, it's the topic I feel most confident talking about. Maybe it's just my version for it's still annoying. You never know, Eric. Crossell says, you get Maghreb camels on standard and medium, I think. See, maybe there could be like another way to amp the difficulty and another, like, maybe there could be a way to let you get Maghreb camels on hard if you do like some extra tasks, but then the difficulty can crank elsewhere. There could be ways to do it. Yeah, I know. Look at the nose. Look at that nose guy. It's crazy. Really beautiful art, though. Eric, yeah, Hauser is too tall of an order. Oh, dear. Yeah, you're right. AI has its problems. Bjarke says, reminder, how wide you get into TheoryRecraft? Thank you. Thank you. I needed that reminder. So, when my son was born, I'm a stay-at-home dad, for those who don't know. So I take care of my son. Not like quite full-time, but he's what I spend most of my time with, because my wife has a very successful career, and I don't. And when he was born, I spent probably the first 4 months of his life with him strapped to my chest, pacing constantly. I had to be moving, otherwise he would wake up and be very colicky, right? And during that time, I was bored. You wouldn't believe how boring it is. And so what I did is I got out my phone, and I started voice typing just random ideas, right? And seeing what worked. If you ever see weird typos in my comments to you, by the way, it's because I voice type all my comments. It's just a way to do it faster. I love voice typing. And so as I'm pacing around with this baby, just like, da-da-da, stay asleep. You're going to be okay. I'm talking to my phone, and I took 60 pages of notes on how I would change Age of Empires. I didn't even get to civilizations. Like, it was just fundamental elements of the game. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Maybe I should start trying to like do something with this, And I had been kind of trying to get back into YouTube just on like acting topics, just kind of spitballing stuff, seeing what worked. And I put out my Georgians video, and it did all right, and people kind of liked it. And I was like, okay, let's try another one of these. And so that's how I got into theory crafting. But like I said, before I started doing that voice typing about Age of Empires, I was talking about Age of Wonders. I took even more notes than on Age of Empires at first. But after that Georgians video did well, I started voice typing about civilization builds while I was like taking my son for walks outside, that sort of thing. Tomasz said El Cid story is really fun, though. It's amazing. Like, he's a great protagonist. It's just a terrible showcase of the civilization. I like biopic campaigns. It's something I'd even like to see more of, but I would like to see a different Spanish campaign, like, that better represents them, rather than just him, if that makes sense. Like, the one on Ornlu's channel, the Isabel of Castile, that's cool. I don't really agree with some of the ways that it was designed, but I think it's a much better showcase of Spain than El Cid was. Technically, further historical battles could represent civs as well. I agree, though in my ideal world, every civilization would have at least one campaign and at least one historical battle where they start as the protagonist. That's a lot. Like, that's a ton of content. But I do feel like single-player content is what a lot of people come to Age of Empires for. Like, you hear about the competitive scene, you hear about ranked, but I think it's something like 66% of people either just want to play against AI in single player, goof around with their friends, or do campaigns. And I think the campaigns by itself is like 33% of players are campaign only. So I think expanding that could be a good way to keep the game's longevity going. Excuse me. Tomasz says a lot of the campaigns don't really use Civ bonuses at all. I agree. I don't think that's ideal. I like campaigns that really do a good job showcasing. Bjarke says 2 of the best campaign scenarios are El Cid 1 and Attila 1, with how it's possible to have them play out in different ways depending on what you do. Couldn't agree more. Attila 1 is one of my favorite scenarios of all time. And it's just so cool how many different ways it can work. My favorite mission in El Cid, the 4th where he plays the Saracens. You can create paladins of Spanish, but against heavy camels, that's not what you want. Poor showcase. Yeah, I do agree. There are some fun scenarios. The fourth one would not be my pick. It's a cool scenario, though. It was a hard one, from what I remember. He then says, for Tariq, I just use Tariq. Stand forwards, taunting units, hit and run. It's funny to do so for a gajillion units. Yeah, probably a smart way of doing it. Carlos says to Bjarke, I agree with your opinion, but also think nostalgia is an important part of the opinion. El Cid 1 falls a lot into the flat side, to be honest. Yeah, nostalgia is always a consideration. That's why I included the likeLyometer in my builds originally, as like, yeah, obviously I'm changing all this stuff, but how likely is it, and how can I kind of make sure that people who enjoy the nostalgia factor are satisfied? Like in my bow crossbow build, where I kept the crossbow and arbalest models as what they are now. Just to make it so that I can kind of minimize the number of impactful changes, you know? Let's see. El Quijote or Don Quixote. That could be very fun. I think he's fictional, right, though? I don't hate fictional protagonists, by the way, and we do have some. I think Yodit might be mostly fictional. Sunjata's life is very fictionalized. So entirely fictional protagonists, I don't mind. Like William Tell for the Swiss. He could work. Eric says there's never really an official campaign. Well, I felt truly challenged. Just block off all areas with palisades, so the enemy will just go for 1. You can fortify that. Yeah, absolutely. You have to set challenges for yourself when you're doing campaigns like that. It needs to be a DLC that gives all the Age of Kings and Conquerors civs a campaign that missed one on the first round. Yes, totally agree with you there. Bjark responds to Carlos with, I was more referring to the mechanics of the missions, like in El Cid, where you can get the support of the king, but also run away and work with the monks. Dos Pilas works a bit similar to that. Be cool to see that kind of stuff in new campaigns. Couldn't agree more. Like you said with Attila 1, that was fantastic. I loved that mission when I first played it, and I still love it today. Though, of course, things like Genghis Khan 1 can't beat Genghis Khan 1. I liked Genghis Khan 2, though. I actually think it's a really underrated scenario. I had a lot of fun with it. Excuse me, guys. My voice is getting a little tired, so I'll take a little sip. If you guys have any other specific questions for me or topics you'd like me to go over, definitely throw them out there. I'll finish reading up what chat has to say thus far. How do you play different ways on El Cid 1? If you don't fight, the king makes you die. Oh, I guess that's true. I do like the story progression of El Cid 1, though, regardless. Like, there's a lot of fun stuff to do on the map, and it makes you feel rewarded for exploring, as well as you get to feel like you're watching a movie with some of the story beats. I remember the first time I was playing El Cid. This was way back when I was a kid. El Cid got stuck in the arena due to a bug, and so I marched out with the army. The serfs just said clumsy soldiers. And then I didn't get them. And I was just like, okay, I guess I have to break in with just this army. And of course I got my ass kicked. So I didn't play the scenario again for a couple months because I thought that like you just had to win with that one army and I wasn't good enough. Carlos says, I always play that mission by TC dropping King Alfonso. Eric says the HD version feels harder than DE. Yeah, I could see it. I feel like a lot of HD campaigns feel harder to me than DE campaigns, but it could be just because I was just getting back into the game with HD. Diego says you can end Dos Pilas in 7 minutes. I actually didn't know that. Diego says Spanish point of view on the conquest of America does justice to the Civ bonuses. I think that that's probably true, though I think one of my issues with that is that Spain was so much more than just like the conquest of America. You know what I mean? That's part of the reason that I do eventually intend on splitting and subdividing the current Spanish civilization into like a couple of civilizations so that we can see more sides to how they were, especially during the earlier part of the medieval epoch. Those who don't feel challenge in the campaigns don't remember old DE Sforza 3. That defending the castle was hell. I've suffered more on that than on any online match. Oh my god, don't remind me. Like so when I was first playing HD, I remember playing through all of the Forgotten campaigns because I didn't play Forgotten until HD came out. I didn't even know it was a thing. HD was what got me back into Age of Empires. And Sforza was vicious. Sforza and Bari were just disgustingly hard. And since I was just getting back into the game, I think it was actually Bari that made me say to myself, wow, I gotta like look at a video on how this game frickin' works because I'm getting my ass beat. What are your thoughts on adding more visual variety like the unused monks or unique castles? 100% endorse. I want to put out a video at some point on regional unit skins in addition to regional architecture sets. And I think between that and more civilizations getting unique looks for different buildings beyond castles, I do this in my builds a lot, but I'd like to see it done elsewhere. We can make the game look just breathtakingly gorgeous without detracting from its readability. And for regional skins, I think there's an easy solution to people saying, oh, well, but I'll get confused. Just have it be an option that you can toggle on or off. And if you toggle it off, you see the whole game in original skins. If you toggle it on, you get to see all the pretty stuff. So I think visual variety is a no-brainer in my eyes, but I understand why they don't do it because it would probably take a lot of animation budget. I'd love to see it introduced, if nothing else, a little bit at a time, if that makes sense. I didn't know that. Sounds really cool. To Divico saying about Dos Pilas being beaten in 7 minutes. Absolutely. There is an icon in the FOS for an African monk, but it was never used as Tyranatara. Yeah, I feel like I've seen that at some point. Bjark says Barbarossa 3's achievement did reveal how it can be done very fast. Funnily enough, I learned that you could speedrun Age of Empires campaigns, and I saw this guy do it on Genghis Khan 2, and that was what made me love that scenario, because I at one point speedran Genghis Khan 2, and like I trained it for a little bit. I didn't publish it, of course. I was like, if you look at my time, it was way behind the record, right? But it was just so fun to do, because it was the only other game I've done any sort of speedrunning in besides that was Hollow Knight, and obviously, like, you know, I suck, right? I'm nowhere near, but like just trying feels so satisfying when you get it to work. You know what I mean? That's why I like Genghis Khan 2. I still have nightmares about the Golden City mission for the Bohemians. I haven't played that one yet because I haven't played any of the DLC campaigns. I believe you, though. Divico says, you must flee, enter Tikal, turn to neutral, destroy the wonder, shows the site of Kalakmul. That's interesting. Just wait till the enemy runs out of gold to curb stomp them. Sforza 5 is impossible. The only time was the AI became a little bit buggy. Yeah, Sforza was disgusting. I think I got stuck on that campaign. Like, I just couldn't beat it. Saladin 6 with no cheesing on hard is hell. Oh yeah. When I was young, there were a number of scenarios I couldn't beat. Saladin 6 was the scenario that I literally said to a friend who I was playing with, this is impossible. I'm not playing this anymore. We just cheated and won, right? But it was a wild ride. Tyranitar says, a video going over each in-game civ, getting new castle and fun pictures of these historical buildings would be something I would love to watch. Let me write that down. Going over existing civ castle skins. Duly noted. Thanks for the suggestion, my friend. Let's see. I didn't find at least Old Body 2 that difficult. Is just pretty tedious. You just got to distract the Goth armies one area, snipe down buildings with petards, convert the trebs. See, that sounds smart, but you overestimate my intelligence and my abilities. And I remember Body was tough. I remember the old Alaric was vicious. Like, that was such a hard one for me, too. Carlos says, won't work on hard and hard infinite spam. Tomasz says, Hollow Knight speedrun win. Oh, my God. I haven't done it in like a year and a half since before Sterling was born. Maybe if we're like very comfortably going with like other stuff, I might stream Hollow Knight. Funnily enough, Hollow Knight is my favorite game of all time. Like, it's obviously not an RTS. I really love trigger reflex platformers. Like, anything that makes me die a billion times, I like. Celeste is great. Like, Hollow Knight is fantastic. But Hollow Knight just, to me, has perfect blend of aesthetics, music, gameplay, pacing, story. Mwah. I've sunk probably 200 hours into that game. I mean, I've sunk more hours into Age of Empires, Age of Wonders, stuff like that. But Hollow Knight, just, that made me feel things. And I love that. Age of Empires is still by miles away my favorite RTS and the game that I've sunk the most hours into, though. Who's your go-to AoE content creator? Excluding Spirit of the Law, of course. That's too obvious. That's a great question, Hans. I love Ornlu. Ornlu was the guy who made me realize that Age of Empires YouTube is more than Spirit of the Law and pro players. You know what I mean? Because he's a great caster, and I love him talking about campaigns, and I love his year-end roundup. But additionally, I cannot recommend any YouTuber more than Armchair Saurus. He is brilliant. Not only is I love his content, it's kind of in like my genre of Age of Empires history stuff, but it was actually his first video that inspired me to make my first video, because I was like, oh, this is such a great topic. I could talk about stuff kind of like this, and he's just coming in from nowhere and getting some decent views. So yeah, Armchair Saurus. And lastly, I got reached out to by a YouTuber called Poop Lord, who does like meme strategies, and he's super wholesome too. Like, I'd recommend you check him out if you like just fucking around with the game, because that's like his specialty. So, but if you guys have suggestions for Age of Empires YouTubers, please let me know. Like, I wanna see what's out there, especially for like under 1,000 subs like me, you know, both to see like what other people are doing with the game, but also to reach out to them for collabs, because I wanna get in there. I wanna spread, you know, spread like wildfire, spread more like mold, to be honest. So yeah, that's who's my go-to Age of Empires content creators. Crosshill says Nightmare Scenarios are Prithviraj 3. Original Prithviraj was brutal. Ivilo 3, Kodian Khan 2. Kodian Khan 2 was really hard. I got destroyed playing that one. Eric said it would work that way for me last I played. Tara says Prithviraj 4 and 5 has been jacked up in difficulty 2, mostly due to the Civ switch. 5 is intense. I haven't played it on the Civ switch yet. Okay. Bjark says Hollow Knight is great. Oh yeah, best game. Can't really do theory crafting content on it, unfortunately, but still, love it. DV Coast says, thanks to make me remember Prithviraj 3. I screamed in my room so loud after the billionth death due to stupid pathing of the two heroes. That sucked. Yeah, original Prithviraj was brutal. Annoying as hell if you don't know the speedrun route. Eric says can also defeat all enemies in Pachikiti 2 by not letting the wonder be built to make Anku Halok, I think that's his name, stronger. You gotta hunker down inside his base. Yeah, talking about the first Prithviraj campaign. That's what I thought you meant, DV Coast. Old Bayanong 5 was hard too, yeah. Wow. I like Tomasz says, I'd like to see more historical discussion. I think your video about dynasties and ethnicities was really great. Thank you. I was really proud of that. That was the video I spent the most time editing of anything on my channel. And I wasn't really sure what people would think about it, you know? I do have a couple other, let me quickly check my schedule. I do have a couple other videos on similar topics planned, but I kind of wanted to space them out to make sure that the Civ builds were like front and center. I do have, well, maybe I won't spoil it just yet, but I do have other videos of that nature. Do you guys have any topics for like those sort of not Civ build, not unit build, but still Age of Empires history related topic that you'd like to see me cover at some point? Because if so, I'd definitely like to hear. Bjarke says you can TheoryCraft new bosses for Hollow Knight. Not saying it's easy, but it can be done. That's true. If I were like wanting to really dive into the lore, which my wife did do, she loves Hollow Knight lore. I think I could possibly do that. I think the thing about Age of Empires theory crafting though is that history is just such a wonderful, accessible topic. Everyone knows it. Everyone's immersed in it, and yet there's always more to discover. That it just makes it so appealing to do theory crafting on topics like that and mythology instead of a more niche lore. If somehow more Hollow Knight clamor goes up, I might do something like that though. Let's see what else people are saying. Divico says Bionong 5 was the hardest by far. I needed like 12 tries to achieve it. Bionong 5, I remember being hard. I think I beat it on my third try, but I also think that I saw someone else do a playthrough of it before, so it's kind of cheating. For me, the scenario of like the non-originals, like the ones I played as an adult, that was hardest for me, what would it be? And remember, I haven't played all the DLC campaigns. I think it might have been original Sforza, maybe. Don't quote me on that one, though. Tyranitar says, I beat the original Hand of a Princess by exploiting a glitch. You can get infinite stone and build tons of castles for free. I wish. That was a very hard scenario. Diego says, about that, the meta has disappointed me a lot. This channel is a great escape for those who wander about a different direction of the game. Thank you, Diego. I'm really glad you think so. I am not a competitive player by any means, though I do like to follow the competitive scene to some degree. I used to really like it. And I think it's important to cater to. But in my experience, how do I describe this? I find that you can extend a game's lifespan and the enjoyment of its players and the engagement of its players dramatically by turning the wheel. Not all the time. You don't want to be changing things constantly, but semi-often. And when you do change, make nice big changes to some degree. Like League of Legends, for example. It's not a game I personally play very much. And I played it way back in pre-season 1, actually. Yeah, like really, really early. And then kind of fell out of it. But I have been watching it from a distance. And it does a great job of reinventing itself when things are starting to get stale. And I think that Age of Empires, if it does so as well, there's hypothetically no upper limit to its lifespan. So thank you, Diego. I appreciate it. Divico says you can review the campaigns and the differences with reality. Here's the thing, Divicos. Spirit of the Law was doing something kind of like that, and I don't want to rip him off. Maybe if I could find my own way to put a spin on it, like my own spin on it, but I'm just not sure. I don't want to tread on other people's toes, you know? Diego says, hashtag freaking devs make infantry great again. They were never great. They always sucked, which is the shame. I love infantry. You're right, though. Hans says, maybe too personal, but what you do for a living. Really appreciate you spending so much time on your content. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Very little is too personal. I'm an oversharer by nature. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I do not have a career right now, and I am a homemaker, home manager. My wife and I recently bought a house, so between my son taking care of that and working on YouTube and my own games, that's all I do. Before I had my son, I was working full-time as an actor and a model in New York. Pandemic hit. I kept doing a little more, even though I had moved out of state. I wasn't doing it for very long, and I didn't have any schooling for it, but nonetheless, I did okay. I enjoyed it. Before then, I worked as a personal trainer, and through all of it, I have worked as a game developer and a game host for live-action tabletop role-playing games. At one point, I actually made a decent bit of money doing that, but it just wasn't sustainable. So TTRPGs are my first love, and it's something that you guys will be seeing more of on this channel because I actually am working on actually publishing my first rule set, because up until this point, all of my games have not had written rule sets and have been entirely, or like, sporadically written. Yeah? Not a true rule set. And so I've been mostly passing them on via word of mouth to people. And so I was able to make some money as a live service, but not enough. Fortunately, I have a very wonderful and supportive wife who makes more than enough money for both of us. And I love kids. I used to work in childcare as well. And so taking care of our son is very natural for me. Hope that answers your question. And if you guys don't want me to overshare things, just let me know. Crosshill says, I don't know HD. I jumped from Conquer straight into post Dawn of the Dukes. Well, great to have you back, man. HD was a weird time. A lot of bugs. And don't get me wrong, I loved original on-disc Age of Empires, but HD for me was a wonderful way to get back into the game. That's not true, actually. I'd been following competitive for several years on Voobly before HD came out, but then I picked up the game myself again once HD dropped. Bjarke says, more clamor will go up when Silksong comes out, I think. Oh, that's one of my most anticipated games of all time. I mean, the one thing that would make me happier than Silksong would be more Age of Empires content. Eric, non-campaign statement for once. What is your favorite, least favorite civilization themes? That's a great question. So, in general, I would say my favorite civilizations tend to be economy-focused ones. I love the Persians, for example. I love the Saracens market bonus. Just remixing economy stuff is something I really love. My least favorite tends to be civilizations that focus heavily on archers. Like, archers are very fun to use, don't get me wrong, but I find them extremely tiresome. Hence, part of the reason why I made some of the decisions I made with my archer, my bow crossbow video. Hopefully that answers your question. Carlos says, favorite pro player and why is it Hoang? I mean, I do love the Celts. Bad but fun, and they're my people. I would say, back when I was following a lot, I was watching tons of pro Age of Empires back in like 2017. I'd say my favorite player was probably Tato. He just had such a fun attitude. You know what I mean? I really like him a lot. I still like him, frankly. Tomash says, I think discussion about the tech tree and how limiting it is, both historically and gameplay, could be really cool. Even the devs seem to realize it with a lot of the new civs breaking the form. Great idea. Ted, mechanically, and historically. That's a great idea. Thank you, man. Why is the character limit for comments so low? You guys, okay. So first of all, my comment section is the best on YouTube. First of all, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I get a disproportionate amount of comments for the amount of views I get, which is so cool, and I love responding to you guys. But you guys write the most beautiful, glorious, epic poetry essays that I've ever read in the comment section. I'm here for it. So I feel like, yeah, my audience doesn't fit well with this live chat style of limited comments or limited characters. Divico says, I'm also really excited by the new Age of Mythology. I want to see what they come up with. Hell yeah. Like I said, mythology is my favorite of all of kind of the sociological humanities topics out there. And Age of Mythology is my third favorite RTS of all time. Age of Empires 2, Warcraft 3, and Age of Mythology. Age of Mythology is brilliant, though, and I definitely want to do theory crafting for it. Eric says, my favorite would be the Khmer, but that could change tomorrow. I love the Khmer. I think they're a fantastic civilization. My least favorite part about them is the ballista elephant, but I think that their farming bonus, their house bonus, unbelievably cool. Tyranitar says, a video deal that came to mind, redoing civilizations that are currently disappointing, like not ones that don't represent their civilization well, but are old and outdated. The Persians. Very much agree with you. I've been kind of hesitant to do remake videos because I feel like people want to see new stuff more than remixing old stuff. Plus, I don't want to tango with nostalgia too much. But I think at the very least I'm going to do a poll on that. Let me write this down. Remake civs, Persians, and I'm going to put a poll for it. Question mark. Nice. Eric says, well, Spirit seems to be slowing down with his history series. That is true. I still feel like it would be a little rude to overstep, but if he ever announces I'm not doing it anymore, I will take up the mantle. Spirit of the Law is doing a master's, I think. Wow, that's so cool. Look at him go. Probably math or economy, knowing him. Eric says, music thing. Oh, excuse me. Oh, my bad. In terms of music things, wow, there's a lot I love. I love the old Spanish one just for the meme value. But let's talk about more serious ones, including expanded. If we're including expanded themes, the Britons have a beautiful one. I love the Vikings expanded theme. It is fantastic. Who else? Who else is good? There's so many iconic ones. I really like the Mayans. I feel like for me, even though I try not to let nostalgia blind me, and I love the new civilizations, for something like the Jingles, the old civilizations definitely get me more just because I have so much nostalgia listening to them as a child. So I'm going to say Mayans. Mayans are my favorite. Divico says, list of favorite wonders. That could be fun. Okay, I'll throw that. You guys want to see a wonder tier list? Maybe I'll include like history and aesthetics. Very good idea. Thank you, Divicos. Tomasz says, Chimera with the ability to enter houses have a strong theme for sure. Yeah, although, and I gotta say, like, even before they got the farming bonus, I quite liked them, though, man, they sucked ass. Hans, so what's your favorite Age of Mythology major god? Mine's definitely Ra. Behold the son of Osiris electrocutes you. Yeah. So when I was playing Age of Mythology, I loved playing Norse factions. And among the Norse factions, I will say Isis is really fun because, again, I love economy. I think it would have to be Odin. I love Great Hunt. Great Hunt is such a fun god power, and I love economy. Did I mention I love economy? Just let me reinforce this. I love economy. And I do want to have more builds on this channel, making economy a little bit more interesting and complicated. So I would say, yeah, Odin, for sure. And I like his minor god display. Good question, Hans. Bjark says, what's your favorite faction and unit in Age of Wonders 1? I have so many opinions on this. There's obviously ones that are just good, right? Humans are broken. Orcs are very good. In terms of the one I have most fun playing, I've played Age of Wonders so much. I have a lot of fun playing like weaker factions for like a challenge, you know? I think the faction I enjoy playing most is the Dark Elves because I'm the worst with them. And my favorite unit for sure is any unit that has nymphs and ladies of pain. Both because like when I was younger, I was like, ooh, pixelated boob, woo. But more importantly, because I think Seduce as a mechanic is incredibly fun and interesting and gives like some of the most cool cost benefit analysis that you can have in the game. I really like min-maxing when I'm playing Age of Wonders and speedrunning a little bit too. Only a little bit. Let's see. Hans says Spirit of the Law has like 3 masters and now he's doing a 4th one. Holy shit. Yeah, I'm a stay-at-home dad and an actor, guys. I'm totally qualified to talk about history. Okay. Tyranitar says, I think you can balance nostalgia versus new stuff, but it's looking at what people like with the civilization, leaving it alone. For my Persian example, leave the war elephant unit as a big powerhouse. I think that's true. With the war elephant, my problem with it is that it is the unique unit rather than many other much more historically prominent and impactful units that were part of the Persian army. So I think if I had my way, I might make it like a unique battle elephant upgrade, or maybe like a stable only unique unit, or maybe even an upgrade of the siege elephant. I don't know. I think there's ways of doing it, but I do agree that they are now iconic to the civilization, even if I think it's kind of silly. Carlos says, how'd to go? Have a great time. Nice to meet everyone. Great to see you, Carlos. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be signing off pretty shortly. Get in a couple last questions if you guys have any. Eric says, I also wonder what your least favorite music theme is. New Spanish is too easy. I won't do that. I think it's the Japanese. I find it to be very lame in comparison to just how beautiful and elaborate you get a lot of it. Like you get a lot of Japanese music being. Actually, Japanese and Chinese, both equally bad. And for that reason. Although I haven't listened to their extended forms of their new ones yet, so maybe they're a lot better than I remember. Tyranitar says, Wonder tier list would be cool. Architecture tier list would be fun, but man, people would fight in the comments about it. True, I'm doing it. Let me write it down. Tyran says architecture as well. Great ideas, guys. Thanks for all the suggestions here. This is fun. Diego says Burgundian song, it's fire. I don't know it well enough. I'm going to have to listen to it after this. Divico says, I would say that for Wonders because I saw one in reality a month ago. And that's definitely my favorite. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there. Al says, hi Al. Hey, good to see you, man. I'm glad to have you drop in. We're going to be wrapping up semi-soon, but let's go on for at least another 10 minutes unless some other big questions come in. Again, if you guys have any questions, any topics you'd like to go over, drop them down. I want to hear about them. Tomash says, I'd like to see a tier list with zero preparation, zero objectivity, zero facts, just very strong subjective opinions. Man, I'm so overqualified for that, Tomash. That's like what I was built for. Here, I'm going to put down the subjective grade, like the pure subjective grade too. So I'll make sure I have nothing but pure emotional diarrhea just for you, Tomasz. Nature Elemental is so nice. This is from Age of Wonders 1. I really like the map, making the map vibrant with path ability. Yeah, that is so fun. It's a beautiful unit. Very, very strong. I don't know. When I play Age of Wonders, since I do all this min-maxing, I usually play with like tier 1 and 2 units almost only. Just because it turns out that the game is very, very easy to speedrun if you just doom stack archers and you win. But when I'm playing like, not just to min-max, Nature Elemental is a great unit. Eric says, what is your least favorite unique units? If you guys would want to see a tier list of that, I could definitely see doing that. I love tier lists. I just haven't done any on the channel because I felt like it was old hat. But if you guys actually want to see it, I'm down. Let's see. I have a bunch of favorite and least favorite. Let me think. I think that some of my favorites... I like the Plumed Archer a good amount. I think it's historically kind of flaccid, but it's kind of the best you can get with the Mayans, and it's an interesting unit that doesn't need any dramatic mechanics to make it work, as much as I love dramatic mechanics. I also really like... There's a bunch. Conquistadors are fun, though there's some problems with them. I like the Obuk. That's a great unit. Such a cool mechanic, though I'm not sure how historically accurate that one is. Mangudai is obviously extremely fun. Chukonu, that's a great one. I have zero issues with the Chukonu, and I think it works great. Some of my least favorites, Woad Raider. Terrible unit. What a lame, stupid, pointless unit that is historically inaccurate, not very useful, and just lame. Hate it. Ballista Elephant. I think that it's a great idea with a terrible execution. I see why they made it the way they did, and obviously I've heard they're quite strong right now, but I just don't like their design. And probably the War Wagon. The War Wagon is my conflicted pick. On one hand, I think mechanically it's unbelievably fun, but on the other hand, I think it's one of the most historically inaccurate units in the game. It's just so random, and I do not like it at all for that reason. But so I'm conflicted on that one. In terms of other ones, I don't like Showtells. I think they're lame and don't fit well with the Ethiopians' identity. The new technology obviously makes them good, but we don't need more champion clones. And in terms of other ones I like the Cataphract. I think the Cataphract is really cool and communicates a fairly unique and interesting identity. I could talk a lot about that. Hopefully that answers your question. Tomasz says the Poles is also pretty lame and lazy. Yeah, you're right, actually. I think it's pretty, but I think they could have done something a little more unique. Bjark says something like Magyar is number one because Magyar is number one. You're not wrong. They have a great unique unit too. Divico says Bohemian theme is great. Yes, that one's beautiful. Eric agrees with the polls thing. Biarca says only tier 1, tier 2. That's no fun. Go dragons and dominate the skies. Yes, that is the fun way to play, but I am a nerd. I love playing the campaigns with like rules set for myself in Age of Wonders 1 to make it more interesting. And among them is that I have to get to tier 4 on every map. And so for those, yeah, it's really fun to do that sort of thing. Tyranitar says, I would be down for unique unit tier list. I want to see the Mamluk get roasted. Scimitar chucking nerd, get out of here. I will put that down as an idea. UU tier list. Totally. We can make that work. Diego says Obu is just the name of the weapon. Yeah, and I think in reality the Obu were used by cavalrymen as a sidearm, and so the big honker is dumb and doesn't really fit. And so we'll put that in the conflicted category. On one hand, I love the mechanics, but on the other hand, I hate the history. Hans says, I've seen every single tier list Ornlu, Viper, Hera, Spirit of the Law, and many others have done. Make one, and I'm definitely watching it. Woo, we'll do it. Al says, make a tier list of the tier lists. Oh my god. Fear factor. I think I've probably watched every tier list of at least Ornlu and Spirit of the Law. It'd be kind of fun to do a tier list of tier lists, but I don't know. That's a lot of research, guys. Really going to have to break out my historical knowledge for that one. Eric says, Cataphracts pack quite a punch. Yeah, they're very satisfying. I love how they can be a strong, cool unit when the civilization doesn't have bloodlines. You know how much I love removing important technologies, right? Oh, that was to the pure subjectivity thing? Makes sense. And Al says, Koreans not having Hwachas as unique units is so odd. Yeah, I agree with you. I saw that you left a comment on one of the polls. I haven't gone back to it because I was preparing for this. Sorry for anyone who's waiting for a response from me. I do try to respond to like as many comments as I can. And I just have been preparing for this stream. Yeah, and I think the thing that's even worse about the Koreans is that their unique technology, Shinkichon, that's another name for effectively the same thing as the Hwacha. And so having it just be a unique technology that just benefits the Mangonel line, dumb. I don't like it. Eric says, poll theme a bit lacking. Diviko says, what do you think of flipping the unique technology of Hindustani and Bohemians? +2 range for Bohemians would be better than as Wagenburg. Have 7 range after siege engineers. That's an interesting idea. I could kind of see it. I feel like Hindustanis having faster gunpowder might not help them too much, and especially since one's an Imperial UT, the other's a Castle UT. A little weird, but there's potential there. Tomash says the Obu is mostly a cavalry weapon, also one-handed. Yeah, I was right. It was used by late Middle Ages, but never widespread. Popularized later by artists and historians depicting Polish history. Aha, there we go. Hopefully, in that case, if I ever did do like a Polish redo of some kind, I could try to go for something a little more historical. Al says, yes, Obu was one of the lance weapons hussars used after the lance. Ewar says, I'd like it. Is that how you say your name? Ivor? I'm not sure. Pardon me. I'd like it if elephants took bonus damage from gunpowder. Would probably open up paths for elephants being buffed without being too strong post-end. That's a great idea. Obviously, it makes them very good against certain civilizations, so we want to make sure that it doesn't go too far. But I think on principle, I like the idea a lot. Oh, God, you're right, Eric. I'm such a dork. I forgot about that reference. Hans said, you like removing important technologies. When are we getting a Civ without Imperial Age? Or a Civ starting in Feudal Age, please? Well, see, guys. I mean, I did make the Egyptians after all. I'm certainly capable of something that stupid. Like I said, I see the ages, I see advancing ages as not being like a time frame thing, but more how a Civ develops throughout its character arc, you know what I mean? So I could see a world in which a civilization build missed an age-up technology. I just don't know what civilization that would be yet. So no promises, but it's a thing I would consider at least. Does the Hwacha fit into the AoE 2 timeframe? I think it absolutely does from what I know. Tyrantar says better than the Iron Age War Wagon does. Yeah, you're not wrong. Al says, yeah, hey, Rizagara, good to see you, man. Yeah, I think I remember this being your normal username. So, and he confirms, and then in 1409, so fits well. Perfecto. Excellent. Eware, awesome. Thank you very much. I referenced some of your comments a little earlier in the stream, man. All right, fellas, I'm going to give another 30 seconds. If you guys have any final questions, let them roll in. I'm more than happy to answer them if you do. And if not, we will cut the stream short. I'd say this has been a resounding success for a first stream. I've had a great time. I hope you guys have had a great time. I hope you guys have enjoyed the recrafts and all the stuff that I've done. Overall, I feel pretty confident in all the changes being made. And there's a couple of open questions on the table. Maybe I'll try to highlight those more in a later video. Because I do plan on editing this down to release for the rest of the people on the channel who didn't want to have to sit through a bajillion hours of footage. Okay, Diego says great live, Robbie. Thank you very much. Eric says he's good. I've had a great time with this, guys. I do better live than recorded. Just comes from my performing background, I guess. And so if you guys enjoyed this, I want to do this more in future. It's been really, really enjoyable and way easier than I thought. Biarca says, great stream. Thank you, man. Chat session was fun. Really great idea. Eware says, First Crusade, healing garrison units and random transports, yay or nay. That's so cool. Holy shit, I like that idea. Great idea. Eric says, thanks for... A+ from me. Maybe not in addition to what it does now, but maybe instead or with some other stuff. Hans says, last question, next stream when? It was fun. See you later. Thanks. Okay, before I get to cats or dogs. Next stream when? What do you guys think about me announcing the contest finalists in a stream? I'd like to hear... That will be my last question to you guys. Yes or no to me doing the contest finalists as a live stream? Because that was my next potential plan. Tomash says, cats or dogs? I would say cats. And my reason for it is because when my wife and I were in New York, we ended up pet sitting around the city and we ended up meeting about 16 different cats. And I just got very used to living with them, you know, 1 or 2 at a time over many, many months. Whereas dogs, I've never lived with a dog. They seem very fun. I enjoy being with them, but cats are easier. And Bjark says, fun to see everyone chatting as well. Absolutely. This has been so entertaining and enjoyable, getting to see like live reaction stuff. And we're getting some yes to getting the contest finalists. I'm going to put that down. Contest finals as stream. Yeah, buddy. And I gotta say, for all those of you in the chat right now who actually submitted to the contest, you are making my life hard. There's some really good designs, and it's very, very difficult figuring out who to go with. If it's saying the channel is recording, yes. If it's only live, better make a vid. Totally agree with you, Hans. I don't really intend on doing any live streams purely as streams. I want to make videos out of all of them if I can. Tough though that may be. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that front. All right, guys, it's been a great time. Thank you so much. I hope you all are doing fantastically. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've enjoyed the recast. I hope you enjoyed chatting. I hope you enjoyed life. And as always, my name is Robbie Howell. And ciao for now, everyone.